Councilor Myers? Who's else for you? Okay, we've got our mics on now. I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's council meeting. Thank you all for attending. I'd like to thank our broadcasting and media partners for broadcasting our meeting and reporting on it. Before we get going tonight, Councilor Myers asked to say a few words on behalf of Atomica. We're going to give her that opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A number of people, I'm sure, are familiar with Atomica, our friendly bug place. They are having a few challenges right now, and they're taking some initiatives, including a fundraising dinner. So I told them we'd give them a little pitch here tonight. So they have a fundraising dinner at 6 o'clock on Thursday of this week at the Grand Gardens. Tickets are $25 for adults, $15 for youth, $10 for children. And you can go to the Atomica Facebook page and get more information there, or you can go up to the Mill Market Wednesday during the day between 11 and 4. But at the fundraising dinner, there'll be a chance to handle the live insects. And for anybody who went to the Amazing Race event up at the machine shop a few weeks ago, you'd know that there's some people out there who really like handling these insects. And our own mayor has handled the insects, but I was thinking more of those cockroaches that are inside that head case. But there's games, there's a dance party for children that's being held, and there's a silent auction. So come on out and help support Atomica Thursday of this week. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, if you can begin the meeting, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, just a couple of notes. Council, on the agenda, there are two entities that won't be presenting tonight. One is Algoma Public Health. They did forward a letter which is self-explanatory as to why they won't be here. That is on the agenda. The other entity is the DSAB, and the DSAB noted that they have not yet presented their budget to the DSAB board. Once they have done that, then they will come to council and do a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Councilor Shoemaker?
Question on that issue. I got Algoma Public Health's letter and read through it. I understand that they have the power to levy, and so they don't necessarily have to come and make a presentation. But I was wondering, how did we make a request that they attend, and they said no?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, all entities were asked to come and present. That's been council's direction. It's their prerogative to choose whether to come or not.
I would ask, and I don't know if it's council's consensus, but I certainly want them here, whether they want to come or not. So I would appreciate if perhaps we made another outreach and asked them to attend as per our request.
Well, Councilor Shoemaker, we've made the request. I mean, we've clearly made the request. They've clearly declined the request. We don't have a power to compel, so they declined the request knowing that we would like them to come here. I don't see the point of having staff make a second request when we already know their position, which is that they're not required to come here and they're not required to have our permission. So, I mean, if you want to compel staff to make that request, I mean, you can bring a motion, but I don't know if we should make such a to-do about it. We've asked them to come very clearly. They've said no very clearly. What's the point of asking again?
Yeah, it's frankly, I mean, it's just disappointing that they've given us this, what I would say, a dismissive letter, and perhaps they don't realize the seriousness with which our request was made.
Well, I doubt there was any ambiguity in the request, and frankly, look, if that's council's will, I don't see the point in it. But if council wants to direct staff to do that, then you can direct staff to do that. So, Council Button?
Yeah, perhaps not for the same reasoning. I would like to have seen them here because I was going to ask a very political question, not surprising, that the government is looking at reducing the number of health units from 36 in the province to 14 and say, where do we stand? I was going to put a resolution forward and say, we're against such a reduction in the number of health units in Ontario, but I would rather hear directly from our local unit before I'd make any statement such as that. Thank you. I did.
Okay, so with that noted, we are, Mr. Clerk, that deals with 3.1, I suppose. So
That does, Mr. Mayor and members of council, will just approve the agenda as presented. A motion by councillors Turco and Hupanen that the agenda for the 2017 10:30 budget meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
Any declarations of pecuniary interest?
Councillor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 4.1, Police Services Board, spouse employed by Police Services, and both their bosses are here tonight.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
Our first section, council, is the levy boards, and as I mentioned, we only have one levy board that we'll be presenting today. That is the Sault Ste. Marie and Region Conservation Authority. Rhonda Bateman, General Manager, is here to present.
Welcome to council, Ms. Bateman.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mayor Provenzano and members of council. Thanks very much for the opportunity for me to present the Conservation Authority levy for 2018. Thank you. The Conservation Authority's vision and mission statement were recently updated with the development of our new strategic plan, which began this year. A vision of healthy watersheds, balancing both nature and human needs. Our mission is to protect, improve, and promote watershed health through resource management and programs with a focus on partnerships. Partnerships are important to bring the community together to promote common goals. The approach results in an engaged, environmentally active community. Thanks. The conservation authorities across the province were created under the Conservation Authorities Act. The Sault Ste. Marie Region Conservation Authority was established in 1963. It's 54 years of service to the community and the environment. Our development regulations are in place to protect residents from flooding and erosion hazards. Our conservation areas regulation sets out the ground rules for operations of our conservation areas. Flood control and maintenance is a large program at the Conservation Authority. This is the program that is operational in nature. The flood forecasting program has recently been upgraded to a more fulsome process with increased data sources and more thorough model analysis. Maintenance on our flood control channels is a daily program and includes channel clearing, grass cutting, debris removal, and dam operations to ensure a flow of excess water during storm events. This slide basically illustrates the extent of our property holdings in the city of Sault Ste. Marie and Prince Township, and that our infrastructure is in place to protect residents across the city. Our conservation areas are available to give the public recreational opportunities and exposure to nature. These photos show some of our infrastructure. The photo on the lower right-hand side is the Bennett West Avignon Creek. Portions of this channel received extensive rehabilitation this past field season, and that included vegetation removal, channel clearing, and bank stabilization, to name a few. So each fall we have an evaluation of infrastructure that we conduct to prioritize our annual work schedule. Next year's focus for in-house work will be completion of that section of the West Avignon, and we will be working on the East Avignon channel above Second Line. So some of the programs and benefits that we offer. Our strategic plan, as I mentioned earlier, is in place now for 2017 through to 2022. Our development policies for our Regulation 17606 were approved by the board this year after public consultation. Our annual TD tree plant occurred again in September. We do it every September with TD Bank and its volunteers, along with other community members who choose to come out and plant trees in our conservation areas. We've been focused on one of our areas that is highly susceptible to erosion, and we're going to be spreading it across some of our other conservation areas in the near future. We have a new forest management plan that will begin in 2018. Our forest management is a self-sustaining program, which is part of our managed forest tax incentive program of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, which allows for a decrease in taxes on those properties under the forest management plan. So we generate our own funds under that program for forest management itself. Healthy Hikes is a Conservation Authorities initiative highlighting proven mental health benefits from spending time in the outdoors. Our conservation areas offer that opportunity to escape into nature. As I stated earlier, partnerships are an important aspect of our mandate. I wanted to highlight one of our community events for this year. Through a funding opportunity from the Canada 150 program, the Heritage River Systems, of which the St. Mary's River is one, across the country were given funding to celebrate Canada 150. Our event, the Parade of Paddles, was coordinated by our staff in partnerships with Parks Canada and the Ermitaker-Clark National Historic Site. We managed, through our partnerships and in-kind donations, to turn a $6,500 grant into a $17,000 event. For those who attended, this is one of the highlights of the Canada 150 celebrations, and we were thrilled at the turnout and the enthusiasm of the participants. And I'm sure you see some familiar faces in this photo, and I'm sorry, Mayor Provenzano, to focus in on you, but our conservation areas offer recreational opportunities for the residents of Sault Ste. Marie and Prince Township to enjoy. We offer such wide variety of programmings as hiking, mountain biking, and skiing in the Hiawatha Highlands. We have a public beach in Wetland and Marks Bay, and hiking trails throughout Fort Creek, which includes a portion of John Roswell Hub Trail. And of course, wildlife viewing opportunities are abundant. So we'll get to the money now. As far as expenditures go, wages and benefits represent 74% of our spending, 18% is administration and overhead, and operations is 72%. We have 8 staff members at the Conservation Authority, and we managed to accomplish a great deal with these. Our revenue stream is split between municipal funding from Sault Ste. Marie and Prince Township, to which Sault Ste. Marie is our majority funder at 62%. In the province, through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change, are combined at 33%. We have some self-generated funding through our regulation fees, and we access grant funding when available. Our levy for 2018 is an increase of 1.7%, which is equivalent to just over $8,000. Prince's levy also increased by 1.7%. And that's we love our little graph there showing funding over the years, and that the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change funding has decreased due to the maturation of the Drinking Water Source Protection Program. It's basically an administrative role now, with which is decreased from all the technical work we did in the early parts of the program. The Conservation Authorities Act enables the Conservation Authorities to levy for capital funding for existing CA infrastructure, aside from the regular levy. The Fort Creek Dam Safety Review was completed in January of 2015, and recommendations were put forward to ensure the safety and integrity of the dam. Many of the recommendations that were presented in the study we were able to complete in-house using our staff allocation and equipment. This resulted in great savings. We have not requested capital funding since the dam safety review in 2014, and we are putting forward this capital levy to meet the recommendations under the dam safety review. The 3 projects that are listed were they were deemed by our engineering staff to be priority projects for 2018. There are additional projects that will be brought forward to the 2019 funding. The money for these projects will not be required until a funding commitment is obtained from the province under their Water and Erosion Control Infrastructure Program, also known as WECI, which will match the municipality's funding 50-50. So just as an aside, we managed to complete the dam safety review in 2014-15 under budget and saved some money for the city and for the MNRF. I'd like to end on efficiencies. Each January, the board reviews the regulatory fee structure at the CA. We're hoping to reflect the real cost of the regulation program with the fees that we apply. Completing infrastructure work in-house assists in keeping our levy requests at a minimum. And partnerships allow us to complete programs at lower cost and allows participation in a wider variety of programs which benefit the community as a whole. Thank you.
Can you just go back 2 slides? Yeah, that slide there.
Yep.
So when I was looking at this, obviously in 2015 we had a big increase.
Yes.
The city had a big increase.
Yes.
No one else had a big increase.
No.
So I wanted you to speak to that, but also when you look at our step increase, like I recognize there's a modest increase at Prince, because the line does go up a little bit. But their increase isn't remotely keeping pace. Increase. Now, there might be a good reason for that, but it seems to me as you're not getting funding elsewhere, the city's bearing all the burden of that. And also, it seems to me that we might be on a per capita basis, be bearing a disproportionate burden from Prince, or the people that pay taxes in Prince.
Actually, for years, Prince paid $500, and then at one point it went up to $1,000, then to $1,100, and then they had a over 500% increase when you had a 40% increase. So the numbers look skewed. They look very skewed because of their low population.
But their increase brought them to $5,000, right?
Yes.
So you're giving it to us in percentage, but still on a per capita basis, where are we? Like, are the ratepayers in Sault Ste. Marie disproportionately paying still?
No.
It might be less so because they used to be paying $500, now they're paying $5,000. But you see the burden being passed on. When you look at your graph, you like graphs? Well, this graph shows very clearly that we're bearing the burden.
I don't like that graph personally, no.
I don't like that graph either, evidently.
The levy calculations are basically done on the percentage of benefit to the community. Prince, unfortunately, does not have any flood control structures. They receive planning and regulatory work from us, and they also receive the flood forecasting and warning, and that's all they get. So unfortunately, the regulations are written, or the act is written, that it's the benefiting community that pays more.
Okay, so Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Excellent presentation. I just want to say I enjoy when you come here along with the other agencies, because you're not just updating us as council. There's so many viewers out there that you're reaching out to. So it's another way to basically create awareness of the good work you're doing. And I send that message to all our agencies that will be presenting tonight. So thank you. My question, going back to, where did it go? Under the revenue, I think you said there's something about
Yes.
self-generated. Can you give us some more examples of what that would be, self-generated? I'm assuming that you mentioned Hiawatha, cross-country skiing, is that?
No,
Okay.
the cross-country skiing happens at Hiawatha. We don't make money from that. The Sioux Finnish Nordic Ski Club is the partner on that, so they have a land use agreement with us, and they use that.
Okay.
And they make the income from that. Our self-generated revenues would come from our regulation fees, and we do a little bit of work, unfortunately, I think fortunately, but unfortunately, some of the work we do is actually for the city, outside of our regular mandate, some maintenance work. And there are opportunities, as I say, for grant funding, so we try and go after that, and that's as close to self-generating as we can get, because we're not a business per se. We don't normally rent ourselves out, because we'd be in direct competition with companies.
Thank you. And one final question. You have donations listed. Have you noticed that donations are going up, and have you been doing any awareness campaigns, fundraising campaigns to create?
For us to do fundraising campaigns, we would have to develop a foundation, which is arm's length, and there used to be one many years ago, but it kind of fell off the tracks years ago.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the second last slide, the request for capital, so you're asking that if you get the WECI funding that you mentioned, that the city contribute its share, its 50% share of the dam upgrades. Is this the only funding request increase you're making for this year? I couldn't quite get that out of your presentation.
It's a separate funding request.
Okay.
For our administration. We're asking 1.7, and this is a capital funding as a side.
So is the yearly amount that you get, or that you levy, sorry, not that you get, is the yearly amount that you levy staying the same as last year?
It's up 1.7%.
1.7%, okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, last year we had this discussion when Rhonda was here around this, and you already touched on it, Mr. Mayor, but I really want to put the spotlight on this. The 62% that we now fund, which has gone up dramatically. I think it was 37 or something in 2014. Like it took a huge hit, 40%, I think it was. And at the time, I think our members of the board, our sitting city councillors and our representatives there, I think that there had been a request from council as a whole to go back as the board members representing the city council to see if there was anything that can be done in terms of this whole disproportionate increase and what's going on there. So I'm not going to put those members on the spot tonight, one of whom has only been back there a short time. But I'm going to again ask Mr. Mayor how we can formally or more ardently ask our board members that are there representing the city to please really get your thinking caps on as to what options we can have. This is absolutely unacceptable in my view, and I'm sure all of council, that this is a subtle downloading that happens from the province to the municipality, and if we don't put a spotlight on it, which we did last year for the first time, and now I'm trying to turn the wattage up on that spotlight, it's very important that the public understand that we took a 40% hit in our funding of the levy of the Conservation Authority, and no doubt about the value of the work, and Rhonda and I have spoken, and I sat there as a board member for a number of years, so I totally appreciate the work and this is not questioning their work or mandate or mission or their ability or anything. It's what is right, and yes, we are the largest municipality in this, but then I have to ask myself, why did the province ever fund it the way they did? And then all of a sudden in 1 year, they hit us with 40%. So that's the part that I find troublesome, Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to ask informally through our board members that are there, if there's anything that you can do or give us some advice as to how we ought to lobby. And again, the mayor's often, well, I think of AMO again. I mean, we're in venues where we can lobby and make something known, but we need to know what it is. How do we do about it? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Bruni.
Quick comment regarding the graph that was on display. I think it was page 12. If you notice the green line, which is the Ministry of Natural Resources, that is completely flat, and they have not increased their funding to the Conservation Authority since 1996. I mean, that's one thing that the Conservation Authority has asked, but very little information has ever been received from them. So they haven't ever increased their funding to the Conservation Authority. And you're right, the city is taking much of it. But if you look at on page 5, just look at what the flood control infrastructure. Look at the wards where the majority of the work is being done. Thank you.
Yeah, Councilor Bruni, I think there's a consensus that it's necessary work. Yeah, it's just we're bearing more and more of the burden of it. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Statement. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will move on.
Mr. Mayor, members of council will now go into section 4, the local board section. Under 4.1, the Police Services Board, Chief Keach is present.
Welcome to Council, Chief.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, members of City Council, it's my pleasure to present the 2018 budget for the Sault Ste. Police Service on behalf of the Police Services Board. I am joined at today's presentation by Deputy Chief Sparling and Ms. Angela Copens, our Manager of Finance. I believe that the Sault Ste. Marie Police Services 2018 budget continues to reflect the economic challenges facing our community, balances expectations of our residents, and ensures our ability to provide adequate and effective police services. When I first assumed the office of Chief of Police, I made a commitment to re-engineer the police service, to create a new service delivery model which was fiscally responsible, but which was not accomplished at the expense of our level of services which we delivered to the community. As we go through this budget presentation and I report on the 2016 final budget results, I hope that you will agree that under the leadership of the Police Services Board and Senior Command that we'd continued to deliver on that promise. Our re-engineering has yielded significant savings in policing costs to date, but the full net return of these changes from a budgeting standpoint may not be realized for years to come. The recent strategic plan for transformational change conducted by KPMG identified that the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service has shown the remarkable ability to bend the cost curve, particularly in comparison to its comparator police services. The average annual percentage change in the service's net budget has decreased since 2014. In comparison, the average percentage of comparative services has increased 3.3% over the same period. There are numerous factors which impact the overall cost of providing policing within our community, many of which we have little, if no, control over. Sault Ste. Marie is geographically isolated, which impacts our costs for training and requires specialized units which other similar-sized police services would provide through a shared service agreement with larger neighboring police services. 0% budgets cannot be maintained forever and eventually have a tendency to catch up with you. This year's budget is lean and comes with an inherent risk of going over budget as a result of factors beyond our control, such as major incidents and unanticipated staffing challenges. Recent presumptive post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD legislation is going to impact policing costs in our community. Our infrastructure to support our staff, such as the police services building and communication system, is outdated and requires immediate capital expenditures, which again have impacted this year's budget. There's been ongoing debate and considerable media attention surrounding the perceived escalating costs of policing. I think we should be cautious when engaging in these types of conversations and look at actual numbers. Although the police salaries have been increasing, the police services, like many other services, have been attempting to mitigate the impact of negotiated wage and benefit increases in other areas of the budget. As you can see demonstrated by the $900,000 surplus in 2016, the police budget illustrated on this slide, we have again undertaken significant efforts to reduce the costs of providing policing in our community. We accomplished these savings in 2016 by strategically managing overtime, reducing administrative staff, accessing provincial grants and secondment opportunities, and undertaking a strategic review for transformational change through KPMG. Although difficult to predict at this time, we are anticipating a surplus of approximately $300,000 in their 2017 budget. Although this number sounds like a significant amount of money, it's only 1.2% when compared to the authorized budget. I'm going to try and potentially reduce the number of questions by addressing this slide specifically. So there's two numbers that have floated around in relation to our budget increase for 2018, a 3.3% increase and a 0.8% reduction. When the 2016 and 2017 budget were introduced and brought before council, the collective agreement had not been ratified with the union, which has subsequently taken place. Those numbers have been reflected in the new 2017 budget in front of you, and the 0.8% budget reduction, which we're speaking of, reflects the comparison of the 2018 budget to an updated revised 2017 budget reflected on those numbers. When you also look at the savings...
Stop there for a second. Okay. I think you might have lost some councillors here. So we can just walk through that point. Again, it's not clear when you go through your slide deck. I understand it because I'm there all the time. It's not clear when you go through your slide deck. So you can just make it clear why it's a reduction as opposed to a 3.2%.
Okay, so when we submitted our 2017 budget, there was outstanding contractual agreements that needed to be negotiated with all unions within the police service. So the 2017 budget that presented to council did not reflect any wage increases associated with the ratification of those agreements. Those agreements...
And that's what you're comparing to here. You're comparing to the budget before the wage increases were factored into the budget. So once the wage increases were factored into the budget for the last 3 years, it changes these numbers. So you're not actually looking at actuals for the previous 3 years.
That's correct.
That's the difference.
The other number that there would be some question in regard to this is in 2015, we reported a $1.1 million surplus. The number actually shown there is $708,000. There were capital expenditures which were authorized to come out of our capital reserves. When we reported the surplus, there was a decision made to not remove those items out of the capital reserve account, but actually fund them through the existing police services budget. So when you look at the surplus for 2015 and 2016, those are reflected of those expenditures that should have come out of capital reserves actually coming out of the existing budget. And that's why you see two numbers represented there as well. Okay, the police service budget is broken down into three separate components: salaries and benefits, operating expenditures, and capital expenditures. Salaries and benefits, approximately 85% of the police service budget is salaries and benefits. The 2018 budget does not reflect any wage increases as a result of upcoming collective bargaining. The contract with the Police Association expires on the 31st of December 2017. Police Services Board will be negotiating a new collective agreement which will impact overall costs of this year's budget. Operating expenditures, this is where day-to-day costs such as vehicle leases, fuel, electricity, training, office supplies, legal and technical support are included, and capital expenditures. This is where we budget for capital items such as computers, software, servers, radio, and building upgrades. Previous budgets have limited capital expenditures in an attempt to minimize the impact of budget increases. Our building and communication equipment requires significant upgrades to meet standards. A radio system upgrade, which will be completed this year, is a significant expenditure which ensures that the system will meet the needs of the service for the future. The issues associated with accommodated officers and those who are off on short-term and long-term illness is a significant challenge to the police service. Our service presently has 22 members out of a complement of 135 who are accommodated. 9 of those accommodated officers are filling positions normally occupied by a civilian member. 7 of the officers are off on short-term and long-term disability. This situation directly impacts our overtime costs and internal staffing challenges within the police service. The Sault Ste. Marie Police Service has expended considerable efforts in becoming strategic in our resource allocation and has attempted to implement strategies to reduce the costs of policing, but that work is not completed. We continually monitor actual expenses against our authorized budget in an attempt to find additional savings. A recent presentation to the Police Services Board identified several internal factors significantly impacting our policing costs. With the support of the Police Services Board, these factors will be addressed through effective policy changes, resource allocation, and scheduling in the near future. There are still opportunities and long-term strategies being identified and developed and implemented to find efficiencies. We have and will continue to explore occasions to civilianize non-operational positions, utilize data to inform effective deployment strategies, and seek out funding opportunities available through the provincial government. Addressing the costs of providing policing services within our community is a priority for the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service in collaboration with our Police Services Board. This is a work in progress. You have my continued commitment to explore all options available to reduce our costs while maintaining a high standard of delivering policing services to all members of our local community. Amendments to the Police Services Act are expected to be announced in the very near future, which will significantly alter the delivery of policing services within the province. These changes to legislation will support many initiatives which we have already undertaken and inform changes for the future. Our civilian members and police officers are extremely proud of the services which they provide and are dedicated to enhancing the quality of life in Sault Ste. Marie. We will continue to seek out chances to partner with other agencies and residents to create a healthy, inclusive, cohesive, and a resilient community where we all can live free of crime and violence and fear of crime. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have questions for the Chief? Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could go to page 3, the one that shows, yeah, right there. You mentioned that the budget for 2017, $24,276,000, was before collective bargain wages were factored into that. So what is the actual revised number? Do you have that? No? But what you're, okay, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying whatever the revised number is, the 2018 budget reflects a 0.08% reduction from that number?
0.8% reduction
0.8%,
from that
okay.
number.
Okay.
So you'll know what 2017 was if you add.
If I add 0.8 to, yeah.
20,
Okay.
2018.
Makes sense. Thanks on that. Then the other thing you mentioned was you had mentioned servers in here at some point or another. And it's a bit of a hypothetical, but does the police service currently host servers at their own property?
We do.
Okay. I know that we're looking to build a data center. The EDC is looking to build a data center. Would it be open to considering hosting in a data center if one became available?
We are exploring options, some of them cloud-based in relation to that. It's preliminary at this point in time. There's a lot of services that are presently struggling with storing of data. Our data is very sensitive, obviously, so we have to be careful in how we store that and where we store it, and the fact that we have backups, but we certainly are exploring that.
That brings me to my last question, which is what level of security do you have on your server to ensure that the data is safe?
You know, I mean, I'm quite positive that the data is, I mean, we have an IT department. I'm certainly not versed in software or anything with regard to computers, but I'm quite comfortable that they are doing, representing the best interests of the police service and our community members in ensuring that that data and that information is secure.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Kompotic.
Thank you, Mayor Provenzano. And I think first I just want to thank Chief Keats there for just recently we were able to meet with one of my constituents, and Chief Keats was available to meet and go over an item. I want to thank you for that. My question is, you had mentioned that out of a total staff of 135, there was 22 accommodated workers.
Correct.
I guess my question is how do we compare to other municipalities in percentage-wise when it comes to accommodation? And well, that's my question.
Yeah, very similar, actually. I was at a chiefs conference where chiefs from across the province were present. We were all speaking in relation to this and the impact that it's having on our service delivery model and the costs of providing police services. Our numbers have gone down since I started in 2014, but they're still significant. And we have implemented a lot of programs to try and decrease these numbers, peer-to-peer support, R2MR training. We have EAP obviously available. We provide counseling services. We're trying to mitigate them, but it's something that we're seeing across the province. With the presumptive legislation for PTSD, we only anticipate these numbers are going to go up.
Okay, so in the history, though, the numbers of accommodated workers is coming down?
I believe when I presented my 2015 budget, we were sitting with about 32 accommodated at that point in time, and we're down to 22 and 9 doing civilian positions right now, and I think we've potentially reduced those numbers as well.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, and what would be the average age of our 135 staff we have as police officers? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, we've become much younger. One of the things we instituted last year was retirement allowance, and that was, we had, I believe, 11 or 12 senior officers take that allowance. Through the Police Services Board, we were able to identify potentially $1.5 to $1.6 million in saving by senior officers with senior salaries and municipal retention allowances, retiring and hiring fourth-class constables. There's significant savings over a period of time, which we instituted as a saving. So that made us much younger. We hired 10 new officers last year. So I would say we are fairly young.
And so what are the expected attrition, the retirements that are coming in 2018? Any idea?
Very minimal numbers, because most of the people took advantage of the allowance and left last year if they were contemplating going this year.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Christian next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, Councillor Kompadich asked a series of questions I was going to ask about retirees, et cetera. Thank you for the presentation. I guess just one follow-up question. Amendments to the Police Services Act, is there anything specific you can tell us about where there might be some cost savings coming out of this, or is it too early to tell? The reason why I ask that is I appreciate the fact that you're trying to find cost savings, but 85% of your budget is salaries. It's the elephant in the room. Until we can control salaries, you know, you're fighting an uphill battle. So, you know, at some point we're going to run out of tricks, and I'm just wondering what's coming through these amendments, and if there's any other possible savings that you could possibly see in the future.
Yeah. I haven't seen the actual legislation. I think it was supposed to be introduced in the House today, I'm hoping. Some of the things that I think potentially are coming in there was the potential of outsourcing certain services, some of which we have done as a service. So security at the courthouse.
Right.
We had special constables at a wage and benefit, and we were able to outsource, augment our resources there and outsource some of that through a private security firm in Sault Ste. Marie with significant savings. So I believe that there's a potential of some of those coming within the new legislation. We're also anticipating some changes with regard to suspension with pay, and there's been a fair amount of media attention associated with officers being charged and suspended by chiefs and being paid for a number of years, and municipalities incurring the costs. So we're again anticipating changes to that legislation to change that process as well.
Thank you very much. I know your task is a difficult one, so, you know, appreciate it.
Next is Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through Mayor. Yes, very good presentation. Last year, you went into a little more detail, which was an eye-opener, I think, to most council and to the viewers. Also, when I spent time with you, you went into a lot of detail, so I want you to touch on preventative crime. I think that you and I met, you were saying that really helps to reduce costs on the preventative. Can you just comment on that, please?
Yeah, that's something that I'm a really strong believer in. Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Hollingsworth, something that I believe strongly in. And I mean, the precursors of crime and victimization are exactly the same as negative health outcomes, negative education outcomes. Impact each one of our organizations and our community. So if you can address factors that potentially are non-traditional for policing, homelessness, addictions, employment, education, all of those, you can potentially prevent crime from occurring. So you see our service investing significantly in that. The neighborhood resource is probably the flagship of that investment. You know, 35 agencies working out of one location to try and address issues within that community. Expansion into our community hubs as well. There's been a lot of investment in activities and supporting some of those to address those issues as well. So that's, and you're going to see that through the legislation. There's, you know, community well-being or safety and well-being framework's going to be announced, and I think you're going to see the Safer Ontario strategy announced as well, which support those type of activities as well. So something that I'm passionate about.
Okay. Two other questions. You're mentioning that, I think you said at the end of December, the contracts are going to be renegotiated, is that correct?
Yep.
And how long, what's the length of the contracts?
Were you talking, whose contract are we talking right now? The rank and file? So there's, I guess, four. Chief and deputy have contracts with the board. We're separate. You have the regular police association, which expires December 31st, 2017. The civilian agreement, which expires December 31st, 2017. The senior officers are in the process, I believe, of finalizing an agreement which will take them to the end of 2018.
Okay, so it's going to be a busy time for you.
It's going to be a busy time for the board.
Okay, and just one last comment, with regards going back to preventative. I understand that there's a possibility that in the near future you might come back and do a presentation and maybe dive into some of more of these strategies for the council.
Yeah, we're always willing to come and do a presentation in relation to some of the activities that we're doing in partnership with community partners to address some of those precursors of crime and victimization or negative health outcomes, negative education outcomes in our community. We certainly would. Some of the work we're doing out of the NRC, some of the work we're doing out of, problem-oriented policing, intelligence-led policing, or some of the work out of the community hubs. A lot of our officers volunteer their time to undertake activities in support of some of these initiatives as well, and we welcome the opportunity to present.
Right, because I'd like to see that presentation because I'd like to see more information on the downtown and how you're policing in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate your attendance today.
You're welcome.
And thank you to the staff that attended with you. Ms. Coffin, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, under agenda item 4.2, Public Library Board, Roxanne Rissanen, CEO and Director of Public Libraries, is in attendance.
Welcome to council, Roxanne.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for allowing us to come in and present the board's 2018 budget. I'm just going to move this down a bit. So I just wanted to share that right now, it's such an exciting time for public libraries, and especially for our community's public library. Today's libraries are the epitome of the sharing economy. They are no longer functioning as book depositories. They are vibrant and inviting public spaces, encouraging self-discovery for all ages, bridging the digital divide, and improving social equity. The Sault Ste. Marie Public Library offers our citizens and visitors to our city access to technology, programs, and opportunities to engage with each other. Through our Digital Media Lab, which is a funding grant that we received through NOHFC, we've been able to provide our young people access to a great deal of technology that we wouldn't have been able to do without that. Recently, we've had an escape room program and also our culture days. So we are definitely not just about books anymore. We are definitely our community's hub. One thing that I wanted to share is your library and all public libraries connect people. We connect people with people. We connect people with information, technology, opportunities for public spaces. So we'll go ahead and get the presentation started. So the first slide that we have up here is the revenue for the Centennial, Cora, and Northern Libraries. The Northern Library, right now, we're looking at a date to open in September of 2018. So, of course, that's why you see it on this budget. One of the things that I did want to mention is public libraries, revenue for public libraries. We, through the Public Libraries Act, we are only allowed to charge for certain things. There are quite a few items that we are not allowed to charge for. One of the items that is currently not on there, but the ministry is looking at adding it, and they have strongly suggested that public libraries not charge for internet. So just so you're aware of that, that conversation is going around a lot, and the ministry is looking at changing that when they upgrade the Public Libraries Act. So going through our revenue for Centennial, Cora, and Northern Library, we are looking at, the board is requesting an additional $100,000 from the 2017 budget for the 2018 budget. One of the reasons for this is, of course, small amount for the Northern Library. The majority of it is for the Centennial Library. Keeping in mind that the board is looking at strengthening our position in the community as a community hub. That involves having more accessible shelving. Right now, our shelving is 6 feet high. That is no longer the standard for accessible shelving. So that's something that that funding would go to if it was approved. Also, additional seating for the library as well. So going to the next slide for the expenditures for Centennial Core and Northern Libraries. There was a slight increase for the equipment purchases. Again, this is looking at computers, upgrading computers, more lending laptops for the libraries, Cora and Centennial. Travel and training, you'll notice, stayed the same. And that Centennial Library, that was for the shelving and the seating. Sorry. And then we have the expenditures for the administration office. There is no revenue for administration because that is just the senior management and accounts payable and accounts receivable. So for the revenue for Centennial Library, one item that has increased a small amount is our program room rental. We have had quite a lot of use of that room, and it is increasing and expected to increase additionally in 2018. So the expenditures for Centennial Library, salaries, we have a slight increase, 1%, that we do expect at least one retirement at the Centennial Library during the 2018 year. And then our operating expenses, the one item that I changed this year that is different from last year is we did not have the utilities separated out from the operating expenditures. The reason for that, for myself to pull that out, was because in 2017 we had a significant increase in our electrical costs and water costs, specifically for the Centennial Library.
Roxana, I don't know that you have to go through each
Okay.
individual library. You've got it shown as your revenues for all three libraries and your expenditures, and then you break out each of the three. So
perfect.
I don't think you need to go to that level of detail as council has it in front of them.
Okay, perfect. Then maybe what I can talk about is the impact that our programming is having on the board did develop a strategic plan in 2015, and it will end at the end of next year. So going to the children's programming, we offer actually 4 registered programs. 3 of them are 6-week programs. The preschool story time is 10 weeks. And you'll notice the increase in all of those programs that children have developed an enjoyment of books, social skills, gross motor skills. The library also offers a 6-week Getting Set for School program. This program offers learning opportunities in the 5 domains of school readiness, including literacy, numeracy, science and the arts, social development, and physical activity. Teen programming. The staff that are involved in teen programming at all of our locations have gone through and all of the teen brain development training, and that is ongoing. Every time there's new training, they are provided with that. All of the programming that we do have is led by teens, which is a very important part of them developing their social skills, their leadership skills. And I just have a little picture of their teen, their agreements and norms that they have. They go through that at the start of every single one of their teen programming sessions. For our adult programs, I just picked out a couple of the programs that we offer technology-wise, and just wanted to compare some of the results that we've received from our community members going through basic computer skills training, social media training, iPad skills training, and our newest 3D design skills training. That is helping because we do have a 3D printer at the Centennial Library. So it helps to have training for our patrons so they can go ahead and design their own 3D prints, and then we just print it off for them. So the library also has several programs for 55 plus programming. We have our Boomers and Beyond. We have a partnership with the Victoria Order of Nurses that helps our seniors remain independent, book clubs, and of course our winter driving session. So on the last page, I just did a run out of all of the stats that we have, 412,221 number of items that we loaned out. And you can see the physical visits to the library locations, number of reference questions. So that shows that people still need libraries, and people still need the expertise that library staff has, as well as a physical space.
Thank you. Okay, so we have Councillor Shoemaker, Kuppanen, and Meyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Roxanne, I went back to the budget presentation you did last year, and it shows that in 2016, the year before, you had a $380,000 budget for the Churchill branch.
Yes.
This year, 2017, that we're currently in, that budget was $33,000, so change there of $345,000,
yeah.
Presumably because of the fact that the Churchill branch closed.
Exactly, yeah.
And as I recall, if I'm recalling correctly, we took $100,000 from the library's total budget and reallocated it. Am I?
Yes.
Okay. And this year, you're asking for $100,000 to be put back into the budget.
Yes.
But so I guess, how do you square the circle that you're going to have two main branches and a accessory branch, if you can call it that, at Cora, and you're asking for the same budget that you had when you had three branches?
And if I can just add to that, because I was going to ask the same question, and one of the main branches that you will have this year won't be operating for the first
Exactly.
9 months of the year.
Yeah, no, before we closed the Churchill branch, we were receiving $2.811 million from the city.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
Okay, sorry, my apologies.
I think if I can maybe just simplify the question.
Okay.
You're essentially asking for your budget to be returned to what it was last year.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly.
So you have a smaller operation.
Yes.
Right? Particularly this year, where you were not going to be operating one of your main branches until
September.
So if you have a smaller operation, why would your budget return to, and you have the costs of the smaller operation, why would your budget return to what it was when you had the larger operation?
I think, well, it is because of the fact that our shelving is not accessible. It's too high. Our board looks at our library as a community hub. So making it into an attractive area. We replaced the carpeting last year. It's all about creating that space, creating that welcoming environment, updating the furniture. Yeah.
But I think that begs the question, though, because you have a smaller operation in your budget. Wouldn't you have room in your budget this year? When I look at your expenses, they're down. Your employee expenses are down. Why the extra 100? If you just got the same funding as last year, wouldn't there be some money to put towards some of those capital improvements? I think that's what Councillor Shoemaker is trying to get at here.
Okay.
we can see it here, but when you look at
Yeah.
the numbers you provided, there is an increase in revenue largely from the city. But when
Yes.
you look at your expenses, you're showing lower expenses too,
Yes.
right? Particularly the human resource side.
Yes.
I think what they're trying to ask is where you.
Okay.
that.
Okay. It's that focus.
So there's a significant capital cost in changing the shelving.
It's huge. Movable lower shelving we're looking at over $75,000 to replace our shelving that we have.
Councilor Shoemaker?
Yeah, just a couple more questions surrounding that. So, what your budget request is, if I'm understanding it correctly, and perhaps you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you want a year-over-year $100,000 increase for an expense of changing your shelving, which is a one-time expense.
No, not year over year. No, that would be an initial cost in 2018.
Right. So would we then expect that in 2019 you'd come with $100,000 less budget?
Yes, because we wouldn't be required to purchase that shelving because we would have it already.
Okay. That's down the road, I suppose. But the other question is, if your budget for this Churchill branch was 380, basically, 380,000 in 2016, we took $100,000 away, so you've got $280,000 left. The Churchill branch is no longer open. Why can't you use that money for the shelving?
We could use that money that went into the capital.
Okay, so why would you then be requesting $100,000 more from the city?
Okay,
You know what, Roxanne, let's not,
Okay.
there seems to be a bit of confusion here.
Okay.
Mr. Shoemaker, I appreciate your questions. They're very reasonable questions. I had the same ones. But Roxanne, if you're not clear on the answers and you want to let us know there's lots of time to respond. To
Okay.
this, right? But you're getting a flavor of what the core of the questioning, which is there's one less library now that costs just under 400 grand.
Yes.
But your budget didn't go down 400 grand, or did your budget go down 400 grand?
It went down $300,000 because before we closed the Churchill branch, it was 2,811, and then last year it was 2.5.
So that's maybe, Councilor Shoemaker, what we have to talk to finance about and get.
Okay.
We'll drill down on that. So you're missing that point. 'Cause
Okay.
you're saying that.
Okay.
So it went down 350 grand, and I don't recall it going down 350 grand actually, so we're gonna have to look at that.
Okay.
I didn't think it did go down to that degree, but we'll talk to finance and we'll straighten that around.
Okay.
I don't know, does Commissioner Shell have any information on that?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, it is correct that the library budget did go down. In 2017, there was approximately, I don't know the exact number, it was slightly over 200,000 that was put into the reserve that the city maintains for capital maintenance. And that was to kind of maintain it at the same level that it was at before. That is no longer in the 2018 budget. That piece was taken out, and what we have in the 2018 budget is the same amount for the municipal grant as was put in 2017. I'd have to drill down further and talk to Roxanne as to the requirements moving forward with the new northern branch being opened.
Okay, I'd like some clarification from either party, however they want to work together to get it to us. I think generally it's understood what the question is, but I think all of us need that information.
I agree.
Okay.
I admittedly had a difficult time understanding the numbers in this
Okay.
presentation. So when we come back to budget, because we're not approving anything tonight, when we come back to budget, we'll make sure that this is clear.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councilor Shoemaker?
Yes.
You have Councilor Hupinen?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Roxanne, for the presentation. My question is on slide 2. It's actually the same line item that Councillor Shoemaker was addressing, the $100,000 change. I'm just curious, I know part of it goes to the Northern Library and the other parts for the Centennial, but how did you come to that amount, Roxanne? Like, were there proposals given to you? Or, like, I'm not sure how that number just popped up there.
Okay. Yeah. That was looking at the costs for doing the shelving, as I had mentioned, movable shelving, the lower movable shelving plus furniture for the Centennial Library.
Okay, so that's going to cover that then.
Yes.
Okay, I was just curious how you came up to that. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Myers.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I think we'll get more information back, so I'm not going to belabor this. I just want to make the point that, Roxanne, you mentioned that it's obviously to 75,000 is to address the shelving to make it more accessible. So my question to you is whether or not you're seeking accessibility funding, options through Ontario Trillium or through our own accessibility committee. I know they have a small fund that you'd be familiar with, I think, within the city. So are there other options being pursued to address that capital one-time cost?
Yes, there are. For the shelving, we are not able to apply for Trillium Foundation funding because of the fact that it's a public library and we serve a population greater than 50,000. But yes, with the accessibility fund, yes, we will be pursuing that.
Okay. Is there not a Friends of the Library that would be eligible to apply for Trillium funding?
Yes, they would be able to apply for Trillium funding.
So that might be something the board wants
us
to consider going forward too, because obviously for ourselves, I think most recently of our splash pad, and sometimes you have to look for a partner when you're seeking some of the funding envelopes that are out there. But I know there are, I think, a variety of funding options when you're trying to become more accessible, and I commend the library for doing that. Maybe Nancy can be a bit helpful in that with other sources too, Nancy Scott from our accessibility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Roxanne.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for giving us a walkthrough. And going to Councillor Meyer's point, partnerships are very important, and I know that you'll be doing your best to look at different partnerships. Very small. You have partnerships right now with the school board, I believe?
Yes.
And I believe the school board provides revenue or pays for some of the programs, the children's programs?
Yes.
Do you also have partnerships with others, like maybe the art gallery, where you do a student program between the art gallery and yourselves?
We don't. We get together for our Culture Days program, Boomers and Beyond, and other programs like that, but not that kind of partnership.
Okay. So maybe in the futures of the partnerships you can identify that could generate revenue for both wonderful groups and others.
Definitely. Thank you.
Councillor Krampotic.
Thank you. And Roxanne, just a question there on outstanding fees for lead books and things like that, and people not returning a laptop or things like that. Do you have a figure for that, or could you supply it to us?
Yes, we do actually. That's actually in our revenue for our library fines. Last year, in 2017, we had $29,000 in library fines provided, and we're expecting that'll increase in 2018, just because of the fact that we do have our lending laptops, that we could get revenue on late fees for that as well.
And how do you factor in the cost for collecting that? Is it through our own staff or for collections with that type of money?
We do have a collections agency that we do work with, but the majority of them are simply paid at the circulation desk.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Nero and Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Roxanne, on slide 6, repairs and maintenance at the Centennial branch. So it's a 100% increase. It's $95,337 for repairs and maintenance. That's not all shelving, right?
Which slide are you on? I'm sorry.
6. You keep referring to shelving as 75, or is it 95? The increase is 100,000.
Yep. 75,000 for shelving, and then furniture as well for Centennial Library.
So in 2017, it was 0 for repairs and maintenance.
Yes, yeah.
And year-to-date, you spent 0?
We didn't order any, no. I mean, there's regular maintenance that we do pay that comes out of our operating expenses.
So these are expenditures. They're operating, in the operating expense line they're included, not separate as maintenance.
Not separate as maintenance, correct.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Some of the unanswered questions will come back to us because I'm sensing some sensitivity in and around this, and that's unfortunate. To slightly different tack, the numbers right across the board, basically from the small folks to the older folks like me, the numbers are up in all age groups, correct?
Oh, correct, yeah.
And that's highly positive. You are a hub for the community, and I think we have to acknowledge that. Are there any added expenses to the fact that the numbers are substantially up?
Well, we do require extra supplies, for instance, like our getting set for school. That's a huge cost for us. What we do is we set up that program that it would be exactly like a child going into the school. So we've got the sandbox, we've got the different sites that they can go to. So this is a great opportunity for children to experience the school environment without that first day, because we all know as parents, grandparents, caregivers, some children who haven't had that first experience, they go to school and it's tears and screaming and crying because they haven't had that experience. So this program is one example. Our Baby Picasso is another program. All this programming, family math, these are all expensive programs to run, but they are so important because of the fact our children are ready to learn when they get to school.
Thank you. And last question. Generally, we're talking about age groups. Do you survey the many thousands of people who go into various groups? 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 75 to 80 in my group?
We do have a breakdown of that, and I can bring that to our next meeting or email it out, whatever works best, of library card holders. Now, keeping in mind there are many, many people who come into the library and utilize the library and don't get a library card.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Fada.
I just wanted to ask you a question. I just want to reassure some people out there that there's some people out there that are under the belief that the core branch has a short life expectancy. Can you reassure the people out there that that isn't the case?
Oh, absolutely. That core branch is such a vibrant place. Getting the seniors there, it is, yes, the library is a smaller area, but it still has that same feel. It's a very vibrant spot. Seniors are coming in, children are coming in, teens are coming in. It is a very well-utilized branch, and the numbers, the door count just show that. And it's not only the door count, it's also the circulation. So people who are going to that branch aren't just walking in and walking out. They're actually using the internet. They're actually checking out books. So, yeah, it's a very vibrant. It's a little library, but it's an amazing spot.
Great. Please, Councillor Schumann and Councillor Myers, brief. We've got to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was remiss. I should have said thank you to Roxanne and the staff for supporting us with Canada 150 this year. Her team did an awesome job preparing the red maple leaves that were posted throughout the community centres, and I just want to thank her for that and the staff. So, and the other things that you did throughout the year, but I know that one was a specific request from our committee. Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you.
Roxanne, you were very pleasant to work with, so thank you for that. So we'll be in touch, and staff will be in touch, and we'll work out the details and the numbers for the presentation going back for the final budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, we'll now go to the outside agency grants portion of the agenda under 5.1, Algoma University. Ozma Vezina, President, and Sean Dwyer, VP Finance and Administration, are present.
That is not Ozma. How you doing, Brent?
I'm good.
Good.
Thank you. Filling in for tonight.
Yeah. But that is Mr. Dwyer.
Yes.
Welcome to council, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, councilors, municipal employees. Representing Algoma University this evening will be myself, Sean Dwyer, the Vice President of Finance and Administration, and Brent Kropotich, our Director of Enrollment Management. I've been with the university for the past 7 years, and Brent has been with Algoma U for the past 8. And we would like to thank you for the opportunity to both address council this evening and for your ongoing support. We actually have a very quick presentation for you. We are going to walk through just a very short backgrounder on the university itself and the city funding impact on our mandate. It is currently split 50-50 between our scholarship program and our library resources.
Perfect. So I'll walk you through the quick backgrounder on the university. So Algoma University, as many of you know, was established in 1965. So we're currently in our 52nd year of operation in the city of Sault Ste. Marie. We were originally an affiliate campus of Laurentian University in Sudbury, and in 2008, thanks to the support of the citizens of Sault Ste. Marie and the city of Sault Ste. Marie, we became an independent degree-granting institution. Today, we're offering degrees in over 38 programs to a student body of about 1,500 students. Of those 1,500, around half are local and half are from outside the community in the region. We've since our inception, we've had a commitment to the community. So in the 2008 charter that granted us our independence, and said specifically that Algoma University has a mission to be a teaching-oriented university that provides programs in liberal arts and sciences and professional programs primarily at the undergraduate level, with a particular focus on the needs of Northern Ontario. As well to cultivate cross-cultural learning between Aboriginal communities and other communities in keeping with the history of Algoma University College and its geographic site. Our 2016 to 21 strategic plan reaffirmed that commitment to the community with an updated vision and mission statement for the university. So our new vision statement, Algoma University offers a transformative education through a student-centered approach to teaching and learning. And mission statement reads, Algoma University provides a first-class university education in Northern Ontario.
The city funding impact on our mandate. We currently receive and have long received $40,000 a year from the city, and we really appreciate that support. As I say, 50% of that has been dedicated towards our scholarship program, specifically in this case for local students. And $20,000 is directed towards our library resources. So our scholarship program, like any university, is an incredibly important tool for recruiting and retaining students. We actually spend about $450,000 a year on our scholarship program. About half of that comes from our endowment, and half of that comes from general operations. The $20,000 from the city would be part of that portion that comes from our general operations, and it's currently split into two different scholarship programs. $2,000 renewable for up to 3 years to the top graduates from each secondary school in Sault Ste. Marie, and we recently updated the second one to a $2,000 renewable for any resident of Sault Ste. Marie. That was a change that we worked through very soon after last year's presentation, and it became effective, as you guys will remember, in August 2017, and we actually executed on that for this September, so that is already in place. As far as the other 50%, it is dedicated towards our library, or allocated towards our library, which we say, directly benefits the community of Sault Ste. Marie. Numerous research opportunities are provided to both teachers and students. Over 1,000 visit the library annually. All library resources are available to the community while they're on campus, and community members are eligible to obtain library cards, which provides them access to Algoma University's library, along with the entire Ontario University library system. We are very happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for the presentation, gentlemen. Certainly appreciate the good work you do in the community. We'll start with Councillor Christian, then Councillor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. Gentlemen, thank you for the presentation tonight. Thanks for being here. I don't think there's a better use of municipal funds than supporting, investing in student student education. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor Turco?
Thank you very much. I was one of those fortunate students, by the way. I know the webpage says 77. Susan, I was 52 students. I was one of the, started our first classes in 1967, Mr. Mayor, at the old Butler buildings at Sault College. It was quite an honor. You mentioned the 40,000 a year. I wanted to ask a follow-up question about enrollment. The enrollment was over the top a few years ago. There's talk about there's a decline in enrollment at Algoma University as there is at other institutions. Do you see a future optimism about getting the enrollment back to where it was?
Yeah, you're quite right. Enrollment has been a challenge the last number of years, both the local demographic and a unique cohort of Saudi students are kind of making their way through the system. It was quite a large cohort. So those two factors combined have us in a situation where enrollment is declining. You're quite right. We do have a 5-year projection on an enrollment curve, and we do see some light at the end of the tunnel after another year or two, where that inflection point starts to creep back up, and we're looking at some growth probably 2 to 3 years down the road. We do have our enrollment management director with us. I don't know if you have another point or two to add to that, Brent?
No, I think Sean covered it. But although, overall enrollment might be declining slightly right now, but we've seen some growth in important parts of our incoming class. So I think a lot of the good things that are happening on the front end that give us reason to be optimistic about the future are masked by basically a very, very large graduating class the last couple of years. So I would certainly be optimistic about seeing some enrollment growth down the road.
Good to hear. To you, Mr. Mayor. So what about in terms of the cost? I mean, the enrollment is going down, but the cost is increasing, correct?
In general, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure that out. But it's going to continue to increase, but you're going to work, I'm sure, as you said, about getting that enrollment back up to where it should be.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, thank you, both of you, for your presentation. I guess Algoma University is going to be going through a lot of positive changes. And so I just want to ask if you would consider to come back and give us a presentation once the new president's more established and once you have your strategic goals more set. Because I understand that just reading the Sault Ste and talking to other individuals from your faculty that there's some programs that are being relooked at. And so I think for the viewers at home, maybe in 6 months you can come back and give us a better understanding if the mayor is okay with that. Because Algoma University is a big, huge asset for our community. And especially the library. If anyone has not used your library, I highly recommend going down and being part of grabbing a membership card.
Thank you for that suggestion, Sandra. We would be more than happy to come back whenever you're ready to have us.
Thank you.
Okay. And we have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation, guys. You'd mentioned that the scholarship money, half of this money, is a good recruitment tool for you because it allows you to basically entice students to attend. I'm wondering if a suggestion came forward on using the funding strictly for recruitment purposes. Do you think you could determine what the benefit would be versus the benefit you're currently getting of using the scholarship money as a recruitment tool? If the funding went towards recruitment directly versus scholarships, which in turn go to benefit your recruitment, do you think you'd have a sense of the impact of that? Or could you figure out a sense of the impact of that?
Certainly we could discuss it if it was whether it came to us as scholarship money or if it came in a more flexible envelope, what the best way to utilize it would be. And I guess it's a little bit up to this audience too, that the money in the way it currently comes to us is set aside for residents of Sault Ste. Marie. If it was more flexible, it might not necessarily go to attracting and retaining students of the community. So a bit on your end on what you would want to see accomplished with the funds that were coming our way, and we can certainly have a discussion about whether it's best to come this way or in a more flexible package.
Okay, that's helpful. So if we brought something forward here to ask you folks at Algoma U to give us your thoughts on using this funding more broadly for recruitment, it'd be something you'd be willing to investigate?
Yeah, if there's some ideas on how the funding could be put to better use, we'd absolutely be happy to discuss those ideas.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Officer Krampotic.
Thank you, Mayor Provenzano. Just a question to Brent Krampotic. I just want to know if your mom and dad are watching you with this presentation, and it's just a yes or no answer?
No. They don't get tipped off.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. We appreciate your attendance.
Thank you very much.
Under Agenda Item 5.2, Sault Ste. Marie Museum, Julia Victoria Piskevich, Director Curator, is in attendance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Welcome to council.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to present on behalf of the Sault Ste. Marie Museum. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the presence of a number of our board members here tonight. We have our Vice President, Mr. Phil Miller. He is also a representative of the 49th Field Regiment Senate, along with Mr. Bruce Pierce. We also have our newest member, Ms. Melissa Hotchkiss, and Mr. Paul Leclerc. For the members of council that I have not had the pleasure of meeting formally, I'm the new Director Curator, tasked with innovating, revamping, and transforming the Sault Ste. Marie Museum into a cultural hub with an array of outreach programming that caters to our community. The Sault Ste. Marie and 49th Field Regiment RCA Historical Society, more commonly known as the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, is not only a local cultural tourism attraction, but most importantly, the central repository for the history and culture of the city of Sault Ste. Marie and its surrounding areas. As the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, we provide a year-round resource of knowledge to the city and its citizens through our extensive archival collection of over 200,000 digital archival items that we continue to grow through partnerships throughout the city. To name a few, this year we partnered with the 155th Royal Canadian Air Cadets as well as the 49th Field Regiment RCA. Coordinating traveling exhibitions such as the Vimy Battle Memorial Icon exhibition that we had the honor of hosting from April to August of this year. Providing curriculum-based tours and new interactive learning activities to the students of both school boards as well as various homeschooling groups. This year, thanks to the Summer Experience Program grant that funded a student position, we were able to provide cultural programming through the partnership with the Métis Nation, where beading, weaving, traditional dancing, and crafting attracted a substantial number of our community. We were a partner of the Ontario and 50 grant-funded Heritage Block Party that allowed us to open our doors free of charge to our community for 2 days, attracting over 400 patrons of varying demographics. On a yearly basis, we are visited by the Girl Guides, Royal Canadian Army Cadets, Batchewana Bay First Nations, Garden River First Nations, Métis Nation, as well as a number of small organizations and groups throughout the city. With continuing funding, the Sault Ste. Marie Museum will move along its new path of existence and grow our presence throughout the community by providing monthly educational workshops, such as our Métis Heritage Workshops this past summer, curated community exhibitions featuring information about community history and culture, such as our upcoming summer exhibition for the Rotary Club's 100th anniversary, curated outreach exhibitions, and interactive workshops that take place outside of the museum throughout the community in public places, such as our partnership display with the Ermatinger-Clergue National Historic Site at Station Mall this past summer, providing the community with 2 blockbuster displays revolving around the history and culture of hockey in the city through our partnership with the Sioux Greyhounds and the SR Center, as well as a continued effort to bring in at minimum 1 traveling exhibition from national museums, hosting cultural events and seminars, as well as providing a community space for community members to gather and utilize. Despite our limited space at the museum, we have entered into a partnership with the Algoma Weavers Guild that used to reside at the Steelton Center and now utilizes a room on the 3rd floor of the museum. They in turn provide us with engaging weaving workshops. The Sault Ste. Marie and 49th Field Regiment RCA Historical Society is a long-standing member of the Ontario Museum Association, adhering to provincial museum and collection standards as mandated by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport, which makes us eligible for the Community Museum Operating Grant each year. Without the ongoing support of the city that we have been fortunate enough to receive for over 30 years, the museum would not be able to continue to fulfill its mandate and continue to grow its presence through its community outreach efforts, expanding community value. By providing funding, the city is not only supporting the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, but also supporting the Algoma Weavers Guild, the Genealogical Society, and many other varying community groups and organizations that depend on the museum as a central meeting space and facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Your budget that you presented was your 2017 budget.
Yes.
And I didn't see in your materials, is there an increase, a request for an increase in that budget for 2018 that will be going to city staff?
There was. On September 1st, we submitted an increase request to $250,000.
So you're looking for an increase of approximately $65,000 to $70,000.
Approximately $69,000.
And that will be going to council for our budget deliberations.
Yes.
So council, now that you have the museum here, if you wanted to ask questions with respect to that increase, then I welcome you to do that. Councillor Myers, then Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Your first time here.
We're
not a mean group. We're pretty good.
Of course.
Yeah, we look pretty tame, I know. When I look at the budget, a couple of things that I think are not well known, probably to even us as city councillors, as broadly as it should be, but certainly not likely to the public as a whole. First of all, I believe the city of Sault Ste. Marie owns the building, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so the Sioux Museum is our museum. It is different than the Ermatinger-Clergue National Historic Site, which comes under a department of the city, which is why they're not here tonight. They're not an outside agency. They're a division of the city, whereas you are an outside agency, and yet we own the building, and we fund you currently to the tune of 77.5% of your budget.
Correct.
And you do 11.5% self-funding. When I look at, by the time we're done tonight, 2 others in particular, the Art Gallery and the Bush Plain Center, their numbers are very different. They're very different entities. Each of the 3 of you are quite different. Do you see some opportunities to increase your self-funding is where I want to go here? And I wasn't particularly thinking about an increase of the $69,000 request, so even more so now. Do you see some opportunities to now be able to go out and increase the self-funding?
We do. So aside for having the capability of applying for more grants, which haven't been leveraged over the last couple of years, we are highly in need of HR resources and outreach. With an additional outreach person, we will be able to provide with our community with a greater amount of outreach programming, which has the capability of providing self-generated revenue.
Good. And I guess the other thing I'm just going to raise, and Mr. Mayor, it's not something that would be answered tonight, of course, at all, but I want to make the point around the fact that the Sioux Museum is owned by the city. It's a city facility, operated obviously by a separate board of directors. But there may be merit in having some discussions, Julie, your board, with Mr. Tom Bear at some point in our Community Services and Enterprise Division, our Deputy CAO, because there may be some sort of synergies that could be created through the Historic Sites Board that does administer our National Historic Site, because there's a lot of expertise there. And certainly I know that you know Kathy Fisher, the Curator Director, very well. And I know that you all do partnerships as the cultural attractions and so on. But there may be something more to pursue there, just in terms of all kinds of access to other resources that are through the city. I do think it behooves us, because it is a city building, even though we're not directly operating it the way we are the other, as I mentioned. But I've just laid that out as a suggestion through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Julie, and thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We have Councillor Shoemaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. The extra funding request that's for this year's budget, what would that funding be going towards, sort of high level?
So as I mentioned, we are in need of an additional HR resource in the form of an outreach officer. We are currently a staff of 2, and that includes myself. So we are very limited. We have been trying to provide our community with more outreach, and we have generated a little bit of revenue, so there is perspective there. But currently, as we stand, we do have a very high need for another HR resource. We also would be putting a portion of that money into securing traveling exhibitions, which we would like to see more of come into the Sault Ste. Marie Museum, as well as helping to maintain our collection so that it adheres to the various museum standards set by the ministry.
Okay, and just from that, I guess, is there a risk that without the funding, the standards won't be able to be adhered to?
Of course. We have artifacts, they are aged, they require maintenance and conservation, so we do need to make sure. We also hold all of our artifacts in the public trust. So we do have an obligation to maintain these artifacts and make sure that we are conserving the culture and heritage of Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. To the presenter, I'm just looking at your income statement for 2017. Is there anything alarming in here that won't be reached? Like, I look at your revenue. Are you going to have a shortfall in your revenue for this year coming up?
No, we don't expect a shortfall. I know that specifically the events and activities line looks a little bare at this point, but fall is our busiest quarter at the museum. So we do have a number of bookings for outreach events that are coming up that haven't occurred just yet.
And your expenses?
And in our expenses, our only over budget expense was our audit. The fees increased. That happens every year. It increases by a small amount. Otherwise, we should be able to stay within budget. Currently, 3 of our HVAC units are down, so we don't have that maintenance expense. There is, we are looking into other funding grants and discussing with the city to make sure that we can get those back up and running so that we can maintain our standards at the museum.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Please be brief, Councillor Myers.
Again, I needed to say thank you for her support for us for Canada 150. She provided our museum moments for us, Mr. Mayor, that you spoke about for a few weeks. And again, Julie, thanks for your support throughout the year for Canada 150.
Not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time here tonight, Julie.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it. Mr. Clerk.
Under Agenda Item 5.3, Safe Communities Partnership, Christy Harper, Vice President, Board of Directors, and Adam Carpenter, Treasurer, Board of Directors, are in attendance.
We can. Okay. Okay, when I turn it over. Okay. So good evening, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. Adam and I tonight are going to briefly speak about Safe Communities Partnership, some of the work that we do, as well as a summary of the funding. So injuries are the leading cause of death for Canadians aged 1 to 44 and affect just as many individuals and their families or more than some of our deadliest diseases. Most accidents are not accidents at all, but are preventable and predictable. The simple fact is, almost all injuries can be prevented. Relatively modest investments in injury prevention can significantly reduce the impact on our society. Sault Ste. Marie Safe Communities Partnership was established in 1999 and was incorporated as a not-for-profit organization in December of 2000. In November 2002, City Council recognized the Safe Communities Partnership as the umbrella organization for injury prevention within our community and has been providing funding for the partnership ever since. The city is currently designated as a safe community by Parachute, which is a national charitable organization dedicated to preventing injury. Safe Communities Partnership achieves its mission by working with its contingent of subcommittees. There are currently 13 that assess, plan, coordinate, and deliver programs and initiatives to promote safety and injury prevention. The partnership offers support for subcommittees and initiatives in the areas of planning, marketing, organization, and scheduling. The partnership also provides support by researching and completing grant applications on behalf of the subcommittees to secure funding to support the initiatives. In total, there are over 130 businesses and agencies, 250 individual volunteers supporting these subcommittees. This slide includes a list of our current subcommittees, and the goal of these committees is to take a proactive approach to safety and injury prevention. Each of them is comprised of many different individuals from various partner organizations and agencies, as well as the individual volunteers. There have been many activities to date, and on this slide, you will see a summary of 2017. The Safe Communities Coordinator and subcommittees work with many partners to implement these activities. The result is the delivery of education and awareness about safety and injury prevention to various target audiences ranging from children and youth to older adults. The City of Sault Ste. Marie has supported our partnership's mission and mandate through annual financial assistance of $40,000. This annual funding provides support for the Safe Communities Coordinator and the subcommittees to continue to work towards increasing awareness and educating the community on important and timely safety messages with the ultimate goal of preventing injury. Adam's going to speak now just on a summary of our funding.
So I will be brief. Again, thank you for your contribution. Since 2002, you've been our primary source of funding. And if you look on the graph, unfortunately, it's good on this, but you're responsible basically for just over 60%.
You just got to stay. You got to stay in front of the mic.
No moving. Okay. So you guys are responsible for basically 60% of our funding, just over 60% of our funding. And again, thank you for that. We do have community partners, volunteers, and we don't actually quantify the in-kind gifts that we get. But as you can see there, you are a primary source, and I don't think anyone in this room hasn't probably seen any of our events or knows someone that hasn't been educated by some of our events. So if we just go to the next slide. So basically this year, our net, well, not basically, it is, our net income year to date as of September is $66.97. And that's normal. We're not for profit. So as the next 3 months roll by, we expect that to be zero. So every year, we typically have $62,000 in revenue and $60,000 in expenses. So again, we do need your support to operate and provide the great service that the organization does for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. We'll take questions. Do we have any? Seeing none, we appreciate that submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk.
Under Agenda Item 5.4, Art Gallery of Algoma, Mark Lepore, President, and Yasmina Jovanovic, Executive Director, are present.
Welcome to Council.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of Council.
On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Gallery, it's a pleasure to be here, and I thank everyone for allowing us an opportunity to address you this evening. Council may recall last year we were here before you in a bit of desperate times. We were stretched to the limit. We're very grateful, however, that because of the funding that Council had provided, or at least the increase that was provided last year, we were able to continue at least operating the status quo, I would suggest. We would like to continue offering our current programming and exhibitions going forward, but it's not feasible to do so under our current budget. And I believe last year we had discussed or advised Council that the increase we were looking for was really a sort of minimum to keep things at a level that was acceptable. The increase we did receive was very helpful, but it wasn't quite at the level that we required. Staffing is still limited, and our building issues, although many have been remedied due to some outside funding and a major capital improvement that was undertaken this past year, there are still a considerable number of issues with the building, which contribute to, number one, the adequacy of conservation of the permanent collection, and number two, being able to offer that continued high level of programming. If we want to offer what we're proposing in our presentation, and we're not going to get into going through all the slides, but Council has a copy of our full presentation. If we are to propose to offer what we're hoping to, then we do need the support to do so, and we need the support of this city to do so. We will continue our partnerships, and we've continued them last year as before, and we managed to largely reduce our deficit. This was in a large part due to the increased funding that the City of Sault Ste. Marie provided last year. However, it was also due to our continued staffing cuts, and there had not been any increase to employee compensation for the past several years. Even with the increase that we're asking for this year, we're asking for a $70,000 increase. The city total still will not cover our basic fixed costs, so we are still attempting to maintain the status quo and holding a lot of that on our own shoulders. However, certainly additional city funding would continue to help us in our programming and offerings to the city, and not only to the city of Sault Ste. Marie, but to the Great Algoma region and elsewhere. I'll let Yasmin address Council now.
Well, good evening, Mr. Acting Mayor and members of the Council. It's my great pleasure to see you all again, and thank you for the opportunity and ongoing support. Without city support, the gallery wouldn't be here, so it is hugely appreciated. What I would like to add to Mark's remarks that Mark made is that we were able to obtain capital funding, significant capital funding from outside grants outside of the city, and we were able to address one of the core issues for our operation, which is the roof re-roofing and replacement of the HVAC system, because that is for us something that is core of our mandate. We are audited by federal government agencies and listed as a Category A organization in the art gallery world, and that enables us to borrow exhibitions that we can bring to our audiences in the Soo of high significance. Not to say also that it's a requirement for us to preserve and maintain our permanent collection, which is very significant. It's about 5,000 pieces and some really important key works in the collection. So that was a huge amount of work, and it's just wrapping up. So that's a big step forward. And the other one that we did receive funding was an exhibition of an artist from Toronto for presentation here and at another venue. And also the publication is still to be released. So that was through federal government in the amount of $82,000, just over $82,000. So we are continuously looking at outside funding. So in the next year, what we are hoping to present is the exhibition of Ken Danby, who is from here. The exhibition was organized and is touring by the Art Gallery of Hamilton. And again, we did provide in the presentation a breakdown of the budget. Those exhibitions are very expensive. And since the building still doesn't meet all the requirements, we have, for example, additional costs there that have to be part of the project. And another one that we are hoping to do is to mark 100 years of the first trip of a group of 7 artists to Algoma and their discovery of Algoma and Sault Ste. Marie. And that is of huge importance for Canadian art history, Canadian history, and I think it gives us a great opportunity that has never been marked before. Algoma has never been in the world of arts and culture nationally. Algoma is in the title of, I don't know, probably 1,000 works by a group of 7, but it has never been acknowledged by an exhibition of significance, of national significance. So I think that this is a great opportunity for all of us to embrace, because it doesn't happen every day to celebrate 100 years. And also, this is the time when the group formed, as they were coming to Algoma, and also the time when they finally defined their purpose, their intents, and their style in painting. So I think that this gives us a great opportunity to celebrate our great city, our great region, and through art. And sometimes visual language is more powerful than words. So I think I'll leave it to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are some questions. Holly's.
Thank you, through Acting Mayor. I appreciate both of you coming tonight to do your presentation. In your presentation, you referred to business model.
Yes.
And so can you just elaborate on that new approach?
Well, the approach is that even though we are non-for-profit organization, we are still a business. And we still have to try to look for different sources of revenue. Our goal is to balance the budget, not necessarily make profit, because we are non-for-profit. And basically, the business model is how do we break down the revenue sources between self-generated and government support, different levels of government, so that we do achieve that business model, which is that we cover our expenses and we move forward too. So we grow, because as a business, we have to grow. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No. So it sounds like...
okay.
No, I should take that back. No, you actually did. So basically, you are now focusing on more business, and it's my understanding that you have been working with other galleries.
Yes.
In Ontario, with a particular person that has helped to start the art gallery.
Yes.
To give you some guidance.
Yes.
And so continue
Yes.
doing your hard work and continue building those relationships.
Yes, we are working with other galleries. I am working with other galleries. We just had first meeting of regional galleries in Ontario, and it's a working group for now, and we are looking at similar issues. Each community faces very similar issues, and how do we address them? How do we serve our communities the best? And also partnering in projects, that grant that I was describing for an artist from Toronto. Well, I partnered initially with one gallery that somehow fell through because they are on the verge of whatever their issues. However, we did manage to present this exhibition at another venue, so we did partner with them. And they did contribute to the overall budget in addition to federal grant. So we just are closing today, actually, that exhibition in Simcoe. And I'm looking to partner with other galleries in Ontario and the Hamilton Art Gallery. So we are working with others, so we are not working in isolation. And I think that our geographic location does dictate that the mandate of the gallery is to work with other people in Ontario and beyond.
Councillor Myers?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Nice to see you two here tonight. It's always good. When I look at your budget, and we already heard earlier from the museum, you're doing 27% of your budget is self-funding.
Yes.
And I looked at certainly the most significant increase in your self-funding is in your gallery shop sales, up 9,000 over the previous year. So it's also, though, in the programs and in donations. And I think it's a strong indication that this community does support the Art Gallery of Algoma. And unlike the museum that, in fact, actually showed a $15,000 surplus, you have a $12,000 deficit showing. And yet you're doing a self-funding of 27% and on the increase. So I commend you for that. You did mention, and Councillor Hollingsworth alluded to, the founder of the gallery, Elsie Savoy, who many people listening know and respect greatly, was here recently. And I had the chance to come down on behalf of the mayor and be with her at a small reception too, and Councillor Hollingsworth had been there and certainly knows her personally. And Elsie is absolutely passionate about this gallery, as passionate as she was 43 years ago when she had the vision to start it. And she still supports this gallery from a long distance, extensively. And it was very emotional to hear her talk about her vision of the art gallery in Sault Ste. Marie. And I know that Brian Kelly from the Sault Star did a very nice piece on her. And if anyone's interested in Googling that, they could really hear it from her own lips. But I think we're going to see, by the time we're done tonight, this common thread of our cultural attractions that have to be supported. And I guess that for the benefit as much as anything of the public watching who do support our art gallery quite well, we need more help. We need more help to support all of our cultural attractions. So when you're looking at gifts, go to the gallery shop, go to our Bush Plains Centre gift shop, go to our museum shop. Go to our Heritage Discovery Center shop too. But, there's memberships. Buy memberships. What a great Christmas present coming up. If you've got it and want a new idea, buy a membership to these places. It's a very cost-effective gift with a great benefit that's available all year round. So I just want to commend you and certainly as I did Julie, and again acknowledge your work, Yasmin, in our community. You've been here since 2011 and you're definitely one of us. And we thank you for that, and Mark and your board and all that you do. And it's a fantastic facility that we have in our community, and we cherish it. And we'll do everything we can, I know, to keep supporting it, as with all of our cultural attractions. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. I just want to mention Elsie's visit. It was a great privilege and honor for me to meet her. And I'm really happy to report that we are in touch, and I'm planning a visit to visit her in her hometown. And also there are a couple of other people who were initially on the board that are coming forward and either donating artwork or just chatting and discussing where the gallery is heading. So there is definitely love and encouragement from the initial founders of the gallery, which is great to see. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Councillor Butlin.
Thanks, Mr. Acting Mayor. Thanks, folks, for being here. And I don't know if it's a subject I wanted to bring up again, but you'd be surprised if I didn't, because I had some involvement with this in the beginning, and unfortunately you people have to shoulder the burden of this. We have, at one time, or we know what their value is now, $11 million worth of animated cells, and I understand you have to move them from location to location, and there is a budget impact. What are we, I'll say we, going to do with these cells? Is there anything in the plan?
To be honest with you, not really at the moment. We are still storing it offsite. We had to move it again. And we move it consistently into non-adequate storage. So that is jeopardizing our designation A. there isn't an adequate storage in the zoo. There just simply isn't one. So we don't have the resources to do the proper care for it. And whether there is a value in it of what was assigned, I don't know at this point in time, because when these evaluations are done, they are done as per fair market value. So what is current fair market value of that collection? That would be another thing to investigate. And what would be the use? Again, we still have legal obligation to keep the collection, because once it's certified by the Canadian Cultural Property Review Board, Export Board, you cannot, you have to keep the ownership for a minimum of 10 years, and then there is a very strict legal procedure how you can eventually deaccession that, if that's the decision. However, this certification provides the donors with 100% tax receipt, and directly affects then the Ministry of Finance, I guess, for the country. So it's a very tricky proposition how we deal with this. On the other end, it is something that we pay insurance for, and we pay storage for, and now we had additional expenses this year because we had to move again. So, and we're jeopardizing our designation name. So, I don't know. I leave it at that for now. There is no time and resources to actually even go through the cells.
We're talking about your cells, Councillor.
Yeah.
Not myself. They're Super Daves. Are they saleable if you go through the correct process?
You first have to offer them first have to get them appraised. So that means another expense again. And then once you have the fair market value at that time, let's say it's 2020, so we are able to start deaccessioning, you have to have the current market value, fair market value, and then you have to approach all sister organizations and offer the collection to them. And then if they don't, nobody wants it, then at a cost, so they would pay some reduced cost for it. So they would at least cover, I guess, the shipping cost, if nothing else. If that doesn't work, then we are free to sell them. So there is a procedure how you get there.
I'll end it with, the status quo is not acceptable to you.
No.
And I don't believe it's acceptable to your governing body, and I don't think it should be acceptable to us. So we need to do something. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we have one more person on this list, that Councillor Fata left me. Thank you. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple questions. The slide, it's 29 of 33 with the funding for 2018. Shows there that there was an increased funding received last year, and I know you mentioned that that covered sort of a chunk of what your critical needs were, but not all of them. Am I to understand that the funding request for this year is $350,000 in addition to what was given last year, or is it the difference between?
No, that is the total. That would be the total number.
So another 110,000?
No, 70. So because we didn't receive the full amount last year because of our fiscal year and your year, so that's where the difference in numbers is.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
The other thing was, there's a reference to a Ken Danby exhibition in here, and I remember it's probably a couple council meetings ago now, they requested
yes.
One of his works from us, did they not?
Yes.
Would there have been, or was it explored whether or not there was an opportunity that if we give them the work, they bring the exhibition here?
They didn't go through the gallery with the request. They did initially just asking where the painting is and if he can connect them with the city. When that happened, I actually contacted them and asked them if the exhibition would be available to us. At that time, the answer was that they're not touring the exhibition. Then the exhibition opened last year in Hamilton, so I went to see it because I still didn't give up on the idea that it should come here. and they did decide to tour it. So it is touring. However, it's not a full list of works. So I am hoping to have another meeting with people in Hamilton, and with their permission to actually ask for some loans by ourselves, so that we still have similar exhibition as they did, because they reduced the list of what they're doing. And I would like to get all the best works and the key works, because this is his hometown and we should celebrate our own. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I agree.
Okay, thank you very much, Council. Thank you, Mark, Jasmina, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.5, Physician Recruitment, Christine Pagnuco, Manager, is in attendance.
Welcome to Council, Christine.
Well, thank you for having me. Good evening, Mayor Provenzano, members of City Council, and staff. Thanks again for this opportunity to present for consideration the annual 2018-2019 Physician Recruitment and Retention Budget. You may recall from last year that our budget request was reduced to $80,000 from previous years, where it was $100,000 or more. We are on track to come in at or just under budget this year. With continued support from Sault Area Hospital, the Group Health Centre, and the City of Sault Ste. Marie, you can see from our report that we are achieving great success in recruiting physicians and their families to work and live in Sault Ste. Marie. We've recruited 15 physicians since I presented to you last year, and a total of 140 since this program began in 2002. While we can all agree that the landscape of physician recruitment has changed in the last 10 years, we continue to see real and critical shortages in some areas of medicine. Throughout the years, we've monitored age statistics for our physician group in anticipation of retirements. With that in mind, we work closely with our family medicine residents in training here for 2 years, and much of our success in family medicine recruiting can be attributed to this effort. The Northern Ontario School of Medicine continues to provide us the opportunity to showcase our medical community for those who come to Sault Ste. Marie for elective training. In the last 5 years, the number of clinical placement days for medical students and residents has more than doubled. Training for psychiatry will now take place in Sault Ste. Marie on a full-time basis, with one spot open to us for the residency matching process. Psychiatry recruitment is an ongoing challenge, and we are hopeful that this one spot every year will eventually lead to the recruitment success. 2 of the physicians recruited this year are unique in that we have not, to my knowledge, had these specialties ever in Sault Ste. Marie: infectious diseases and geriatric medicine. It's been reported that on average it takes approximately 1 year to recruit a physician. I thought you might find it interesting to know how long it took to recruit some of the physicians from this year's group. 2 actually took less than a year, a physician couple. They closed 2 very busy practices in Southern Ontario and relocated and started here in less than 8 months. Another physician recruited took exactly 1 year to the day from the first email inquiry to the time he walked into Sault Area Hospital to start practice, so very typical. The recruitment of our new geriatrician was not so typical. Her recruitment has taken 2 years, very actively pursuing all of the pieces necessary to bring her to Sault Ste. Marie. It's involved the help of physicians in another community, multiple site visits, very complex, but a successful recruitment. She and her family arrived in Sault Ste. Marie just last week and will begin her practice in mid-November. The recruitment of another specialist was more of a passive recruitment, taking 9 years to complete. He is from Sault Ste. Marie. We've known him since he started medical school and have followed him through his 5 years of residency. He's just recently settled back in his hometown and started his practice in mid-October. All of these recruits visited Sault Ste. Marie at least once in the process. They were all given a community tour through the Economic Development Corporation, met potential colleagues, toured schools, daycares, toured and purchased homes or secured rental accommodations. They have visited dance studios, our community centers, libraries, hiked, and enjoyed time at the Mill Market. Most have or will meet with staff at the New to the Sioux program. Also, I thought it might be of interest to take a snapshot of what our success has looked like in the last few years. So out of 32 physicians recruited since 2015-16, 17 are from Sault Ste. Marie or have some tie to our community. 9 have participated in the summer studentship program run through physician recruitment and NOSM. 3 of the 32 are from outside of Canada and 4 are from out of province. Of great importance to recruitment is that we continue to encourage our local medical learners to experience the medical community here through elective placements, clerkship, through NOSM, and the summer studentship program. It's with the ongoing support of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, Sault Area Hospital, and the Group Health Centre that we are able to succeed in bringing family physicians and specialists to our community.
So thank you for that presentation. I think you have the rest of the materials in your package. I want to thank you, Christine. You know, as the chair of the Physician Recruitment Committee, I see the good work that you do.
Oh, thank
and
you.
we only have 2 human resources on this file. I think we can all agree it's a very important file. And those 2 human resources, they do a tremendous amount of work for 2 people. And personally, I think they're doing a fantastic job. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
We've come a long way in the community as far as our physician profile goes.
Thank you.
And that certainly is due to your good work. So we'll start with Councillor Butland.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and the proof is in the pudding. You folks have done a great job. I don't know, I was going to ask it of Algoma University, but I don't think we had the appropriate principles here, but you mentioned in your report about clinical research and clinical training in Sault Ste. Marie and the Sault Ste. Marie Academic Medical Association hired a person to work with Algoma, and this is one of those old things that I have to revisit historically. In 2005, we were saying, well, this is great potential for Sault Ste. Marie. Clinical research, and the physicians got behind it, and there was tremendous dialogue between NOSM, Sault Ste. Marie, the physicians, and it came to a point where they said, we're about to sign an agreement, and I'm not making this up. AU and NOSM worked towards a research center, conducted a study, mainly subsidized by the City of Sault Ste. Marie, saying Sault Ste. Marie is the right location. Yep. Now, I have every reason to believe with this here, and there are active folks out there now saying, maybe it's time to put this back on the table. Again, I don't know if it's your department is the right, but would you comment?
It's not my department, but there are boots on the ground. It is taking place. There's research dollars there, and like you say, there is someone dedicated to this at Algoma U through the Academic Medical Association, so it is underway. I do recall back in 2005, I had just started, and I do remember those meetings, and it has taken a long time, but you do have a very active medical association and faculty in this community, and research is important to many of them. So it is taking place as we speak.
And if I can end it, Mr. Mayor, I don't have to end it, but the final comment, I talked to one of the prime movers this afternoon, and he's saying, yeah, let's go. But I think the City of Sault Ste. Marie has a role to play on this and get behind it, because there are research monies in for the NOHFC and FedNor, et cetera. So hopefully something will be before us rather soon in a more concrete fashion.
Yeah, it won't come from physician recruitment, Councillor Butland, but there is a team of people looking at this, and there's certainly good work being done on it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions on physician recruitment, Councillor Shoemaker?
More of a comment, actually. But
so I have Councillor Shoemaker, then Hollingsworth.
I think the physician recruitment structure is an excellent example of how we put our money in and get something back. I was asking questions of Algoma U earlier, and had I thought of the connection at the time, I may have drawn the link between we put money into this and it results in more doctors coming into our community. So I'm sort of generally saying with the Algoma U thing, this might be a structure to look at to see if we can get more students in our community through using the example that physician recruitment's provided to put our money towards expanding the service and the people in our community.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. It's also more of a comment, Mr. Mayor. Excellent report.
Oh, thank you.
And I wish you can spend a good hour with us, because I feel the viewers out there need to hear more about the wonderful work you're doing in your small team. And I just want to, I know you're not really involved with the research side, but that was my main point as well, along with Councillor Butland. I know that there's a number of physicians out in our community that are eager to do more research. So with your help and with the mayor's help, we hope that we can push that forward. But I also want to commend yourself for focusing on our, how can I say, our Suites that have gone to medical school, and convince them that come back to the great quality of life that we have here. So well done.
Thank you.
And if there's anything that we can do, please let us know. One last point, the model that you're using to basically take potential physicians through our community, I would like to see that model be applied to some future entrepreneurs or businesses that might be interested in coming here. And showcasing our positives can probably capture some future entrepreneurs as well if we take your model.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Bruni.
Thank you very much for your report. Just a brief comment regarding the physician age statistics. Right now, we have over, well, it's 56% that the doctors are 50 and under, which is healthy, I believe, because hopefully they stay here long-term. So I think the process is working excellent by recruiting, and as Councillor Shoemaker has said, we're investing some money, not a lot, but our return is great, so I thank you.
Good, thank you. Good.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under agenda item 5.6, Sioux Arena Association. Lauren Jarrett, treasurer, and Chad Bouchard, manager, are in attendance.
Welcome to council, gentlemen. Before you get going, I wanted to give Councillor Nero the mic. He wanted to make some recognizing comments here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, gentlemen, I wanted to take this opportunity to extend congratulations to Community First Pee Wee Arena for your 50th anniversary year. The Pee Wee, or Community First Pee Wee, opened October 1967, and you will all know that the arena is not a city facility, but an arena built by volunteers, and a big part of minor hockey in this city for the last 50 years. It's my understanding as well that Mr. Emerson Bentley, who was a member of the original build team and also on the first board of directors, is still a director today.
Absolutely. So that would be 50 years of service.
How great is that? I mean, you know. So just on behalf of Mayor and Council, just wanted to extend our congratulations on 50 years of
Thank you very
service
much.
to this community.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Nero. Gentlemen, welcome to council. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I'm here today to talk to you about the Sault Ste. Arena, the Community First Sault Ste. Arena. As we did last year, what we're asking for is your continued support, as you've done in the years past, which is the portion of the city taxes. The money provided is always used to try and reduce our operating costs. Arenas, as I'm sure you're well aware, are quite expensive, and to stay on top of the new technologies and things like that is quite a task. As Councillor Nero said earlier, this year we have over 1,000 children playing out of the Pee Wee Arena. We also employ 5 full-time staff and 17 part-time staff. We are also a member of a team with the city, and we host several events, as indicated on the screen there with CARA and the Little NHLs, M&R tournaments, things like that. We try to maintain ourselves as self-sufficient. Basically, we are not for profit, but we are also a registered Canadian charity. I'm not sure if everybody was aware of that. As you can see on the slide, private donations, corporate donations, and a lot of fundraising goes into maintaining our operating costs to keep the arena viable and to try and keep the costs down so the young children can play hockey. Once again, as stated earlier, it is our 50th year. Our actual anniversary was October the 1st, 1967, when we became a registered charity. So almost a month ago was our official 50th anniversary. Countless volunteers, donors contributed their time, as indicated earlier as well. It was built by volunteers, and we look forward to keeping it open for another 50 years. As indicated earlier as well, we are run by a volunteer board of 10. As indicated there, people, Ron Francis, Marty Turco, etc., many other people have come through the P Arena and have moved on to successful hockey careers. Our financial summary, as indicated there, everybody sees the what we are dealing with on an annual basis. It's pretty self-explanatory regarding the budget and what we are trying to achieve to maintain the arena ongoing. Go ahead. Just in closing, we would like to ask City Council for your continued support in the proportion of the annual city taxes, as you've done in years past.
I can assure you I did not go on to have a successful hockey career, but I enjoyed many years at the CPWE Arena. We'll have Councillor Turco, then Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too congratulate you folks and all the volunteers that are there now and the ones that have come before over the last 50 years. And I've been at that arena at one time or another during the last 50 years, being involved, whether it was the Pee Wee Fall Fair, the annual Mayor's Hockey Tournament. You still have that, don't you?
Absolutely.
Doing some MC work, I remember. Many social events, the New Year's Eve parties we had, the Blue Line Room, the Campbell Midway, got to know the Campbells on a personal basis, and people like Stu Harris, and I don't want to mention any names, but Jack Stewart. And I think it's important to know that that arena has become a landmark in Sault Ste. Marie. Because, as we all know, there's never enough ice time, Chad, right? Mr. Jarrett?
Absolutely.
In Sault Ste. Marie. Where would we be, Mr. Mayor, if we didn't have the Pee Wee Arena? So, congratulations. I always said we put enough Turcos on the ice there at the Pee Wee over the years. One of them would make it to the NHL.
And there's a few more coming
I
up.
know there are. There's some more. But my question is, I do have a question, Mr. Mayor.
That'd be great, Councillor Turco.
We're politicians and radio people. So what would happen? I mean, if we didn't have the Pee Wee Arena in Sault Ste. Marie, based on what you folks have seen over the last 50 years?
Today, right now, I would say there would be a burden put back onto the city of Sault Ste. Marie to provide ice time for the users, for the people of the city. And that's our commitment to help the city provide that option for the young kids in our city.
Thank you, Chad. And I know that a lot of the people have always mentioned that they have to, in some cases, they have to go out of town to get ice time, which is very, very sad and disappointing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The question is actually through you to the Commissioner of Finance. I sometimes see different numbers, which is why I'm asking for clarification. 11,000 is the request that comes from them, but I've seen I seem to recall, in our outside agency funding spreadsheet that we get at budget time, isn't there a number of 60,000 allocated towards the Pee Wee, or am I misremembering?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, no, there isn't $60,000 allocated to the Pee Wee. It's always been based on what their taxes are, the municipal and education portion.
If council so chooses to give the 60,000, we would gladly accept.
Okay, thanks. So 11,500, I mean, that's in the ballpark of what we give them every year?
Our budget for 2017 was $12,750, and again, it's an estimate, depends on what the taxes are.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shoemaker's questions rarely lead to giving more money.
He opened the door.
Yeah, that's right. And you walked through it very adeptly. Any other questions, Council? Gentlemen, thank you for this, for what you do, for the volunteer service that you provide. I think it's a common among the community that the PWE is a really important local institution, and we're happy to support and continue to support it. So thank you for what you do, because if you didn't do what you did on a volunteer basis, it would be hard to keep it going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.7, Canadian Bushplane Heritage Centre, Mike Delfrey, Executive Director, Kim Park, President, and Richard Walker, Treasurer, are in attendance.
Your worship, members of council, thank you again for saving the best for the last. Just want to make that a matter of record. Councillor, thank you very much.
We actually don't work on a best for last basis. We work on the what we expect to be the longest for last basis.
And
the most expensive. Yes.
With that in mind, then, I will get started with my presentation, and as you can see, I tried to follow the directions we received in the letter about asking us to come to council with our presentation tonight. The use of funds for the bushplane that we receive from the city go into our general operating revenue, and which is unrestricted, so that we use it primarily for wages and utilities and taxes and et cetera. We were able to maintain the employee complement this year. We didn't have any layoffs. We did pay our realty taxes this year. It was a little more than $75,000, in fact, and we expect, because of the city's contribution this year, we will we'll be able to receive or to achieve a balanced budget. You can see that, and I've shown this in the past, the admissions and the event numbers that we're achieving each year have been going up, and they've been going up substantially, and that will be the case this year. That projection of 19,200 is pretty accurate now because of the cruise ship business this summer. We knew those are finished, and the bus tours are finished for this year, so we're pretty sure that we're going to hit that target. The total visitors is a function of the admissions as well as the event business that we have, and one of our biggest events coming up this weekend is the Holiday Gift and Craft Show. So depending on how well that traffic is, we'll hit those targets of 43,500. So in terms of numbers, we are the largest cultural attraction in the city. We have a partnership with the other cultural attractions, a four-culture pass and a passport pass, and we receive an amount of admissions that's equal to the other three cultural attractions combined. So I think, again, if you're wondering whether or not the bushplane is popular in the community, is valued by the community, I think the numbers speak for themselves. The kind of events that we achieved this year, there are two major ones. There's some smaller ones, but we're building a new environmental and ecology exhibit that the Kiwanis clubs have supported with buying the naming rights to them. And this exhibit it's a 6,000 square foot exhibit, and it's meant to showcase all the science that happens in Sault Ste. Marie behind the walls of the Ontario Forest Research Institute, Natural Resources Canada, the Invasive Species Centre. There's a tremendous amount of science that happens in Sault Ste. Marie that people don't see. And through this exhibit, we'll become the public face of that, which will both give the scientists and that science some profile and some awareness in the community, but also will support the Science Festival that we began 4 years ago, which has now become the largest science festival in Northern Ontario, and as near as we can estimate, the second largest in Ontario. We've really had a lot of cooperation, a lot of success from the partners in Sault Ste. Marie to make science, to make Sault Ste. Marie known for science, which is absolutely a growth sector and supports a lot of the curriculum at the elementary and secondary level. So we want to do more than we have been doing, and this new exhibit is going to enable us to do it. The Nature Exchange is a big part of it. That is starting to draw large numbers of students coming on a very regular basis, many as often as a week, every week, and they become members. And it's a way to make the Bushplane Centre more accessible.
For a number of years, we've been working to restore a vintage aircraft called the Fox Moth, and the restoration is now complete. And this will put our city on the map nationally and possibly internationally when we are able to get that airplane certified and do some initial flights. We have a whole campaign that we plan to do through TV, through the CBC and CTV, to draw some attention to Sault Ste. Marie and our ability to do vintage aircraft restoration. So that's yet to come. So this is a good news, bad news story for this year, and we have a number of challenges that we've been facing and continue to face, and in particular, they are infrastructure challenges. I just added some pictures of our leaky roof, and we have a number of other infrastructure challenges. The exterior of the building is a 70-year-old building. Our washrooms, partly because of their age, but also because of the additional use and the traffic that we're getting, they just get worn out and beat up a lot sooner. A lot of our technology is old, a lot of our computer technology that we use for exhibits, our theaters, and that affects the quality of the guest experience that we're selling. And when equipment doesn't work and people have paid for it, obviously that's not going to work to your favor. We've been successful in achieving 5-star ratings from TripAdvisor, and we're really loath to put that kind of reputation at risk, because more and more consumers are using those kinds of ratings to decide whether or not they're going to come to Sault Ste. Marie and going to come to your exhibit. So we have a budget request, and we are asking for an increase this year. Our treasurer will speak to it, and our board chair will speak to it. We're asking for an annual operating increase, and that increase is meant to address the additional operating costs of our utilities, things like the minimum wage increase, but also in particular a lot of the infrastructure work that needs to be done, the deficiencies, the additional money, if it's approved, will go directly to hiring people. We believe there is significant and substantial additional business in the community for us to go after. One of them in particular, we're actually going to start working on ourselves without additional hands, and that's an event development service that particularly targets a growth in the number of reunions that are held in the city. We've been talking to some partners about that, hotels and others, and we think there's some very good business there that could be done. And the last point I make is that we have not received a net increase in our funding from the city for the last 5 years. And when you pair that with the kind of growth we've been able to achieve, you can see that there's sort of an imbalance there in terms of the self-funding that we realize compared to the public funding. Okay, so I'll stop there and turn the mic over to Richard Walker, who's our co-chair of our finance committee.
Last year, when I was here before you, I said we needed $100,000 just to make it through in our bank account at December. If you look on the projections for 2017, that's included in your package, look at the last line, May, and it'll show that we had a loss of $147,000. So we definitely need those kinds of funds at December 31st in order to put ourselves through. Before I get into the funding request, I guess you might want to say, okay, what's this all about? This is what our volunteers wear when they do a tour. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Dick Hedrick for his tremendous support for this. He's probably a full-time employee in the summertime. Now, the positive thing on our budget is we are still projecting a small surplus. 357 is on that number. Our finance committee does a tremendous job of questioning. Bruce Codhill puts this budget together on a month-by-month basis. Every month we go through and we question, are we on plan? Where can we get savings so that we can continue to go forward? We, as Mike had addressed, we had a roof problem. We knew the roof problem was back in the spring. We would not allow the board, or we would not go to the board and ask for funding requests for that roof until we knew where the funds were coming from. If we said repair it, I wouldn't want to be coming to City Council next May to say, okay, now we're short funds, give us some emergency funds to get through that 147. So we don't allow that. So I want to ensure you that we take that job very seriously. We have not received funding increases from neither the city nor the province. 110 from the city, 46,542 from the province for the last 5 years. If you look at our numbers, we have gone from I'll call it self-funding, admissions, gift shop, events. We've gone from $460,000 to almost $600,000, which we're projecting this year. That's a 30% increase. And that's from staff and all of the other events that they've really done. Now, unfortunately, all of that increase that we've done has been eaten up by I'll call them non-controllable costs. We haven't increased wages. We have increased traffic, and we really need your support in order to increase staffing levels, because if you look at those numbers that are up there, we're reaching almost an unsupportable position at times in our museum on the number of people, the traffic flow through there. We can only do 60 people an hour through our Wildfires Theater. That's the most successful tourist attraction in our place. So we're reaching numbers that are unsustainable down the road without some increases. One other thing is we have undertaken or are currently undertaking a capital program in order to, we're seeking donations. We're seeking donations from various corporations, from individuals, and through crowdfunding. So if you haven't made your donation yet, we're open for business at the museum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Park.
Councilors, staff. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of the Bush Plains Center. I'm going to cover off some of the things that my colleagues have already spoken to. But before I get into that, I'd like to ask City Council to invest in a better quality and an additional amount of foam in the bleachers.
Let's get on with it, Mr. Park.
I think it's my old rear end doesn't have enough padding anymore.
Yes, sir.
As when we were before you last year, we were here to request the city continues to financially support this great facility. I'm going to call it your jewel and recognize the results and the efforts put forward by our staff and our amazing group of volunteers. That through their generosity, where they willingly give their time, we're able to keep our doors open, continue to grow our offerings, and deliver our message, all this while being undercapitalized. For those of you who have had the pleasure of a one-on-one chat with me, you know how I have referred to TripAdvisor. Mike referred to it, Richard referred to it. I went on it this afternoon. We are still the #1 thing to do in Sault Ste. Marie. With 440 responses, 94% of them speaking to either excellent or very good. So we are your jewel. The Bush Plain is your #1 attraction in Sault Ste. Marie. Some of our partners in tourism culture also score well on TripAdvisor. A couple of them make the top 10. A couple more are in the top 20. I challenge you to go on the site yourself, read some of the visitor comments, and see how we are performing and what we are doing for this community. For the last 5 years, the city has supported us financially with a cash donation of $110,000. Again, thank you for that. However, I'm sure it's not necessary to remind Council and you, Mr. Mayor, how much less we are able to achieve with that support today. Energy costs are going up. It's our second greatest expense. We're a 65,000 square foot barn. Wages are our biggest expense. The minimum wage is going to increase. We have to find the money or we have to cut programming. Despite your best efforts, property taxes have gone up in the last 5 years. And for those of you who are not aware, the Bush Plain pays city taxes, meaning your jewel only costs you approximately $62,000 per year. $62,000 per year is what your net cost is approximately when you've been giving us $110,000 all along. Michael spoke to the cultural pass. That is amazing that of the 4 cultural partners who participate in this, it's an opportunity for visitors from out of town. They purchase the pass and it gives them a discount to come to the 4 cultural attractions at our end of the city. It's redeemed, and that's where we get this number from. The Bush Plane is more than double the combined visits of our other 3 cultural partners. That speaks volumes of how interesting and how rewarding the experience is at the Bush Plane. Another thing that's on the TripAdvisor site, it suggests that you might spend 2.5 to 3 hours there. One of our volunteers did a Google search about the 5 aviation museums in Ontario. The Bush Plane scored #1. We get $46,000 from the province, and yet we beat out the Royal Museum in Ottawa, the Warplane Heritage Museum in Hamilton, where their average visits are only about an hour, whereas the Bush Plane is 2.5. Statistically, we are putting more bums in beds, if I may use someone else's comment, that makes our city a richer community. The people that are coming into town and enjoying our offering are staying in hotels, spending money in the restaurants, shopping, putting more money into the coffers in this community than what we had before. Our proven responsible fiscal management, as Richard spoke, is one of the reasons that this underfinanced business survives and against all obstacles has shown steady success and growth. He's spoken to how well we manage our money. I've had the pleasure to serve for 16 years. The very first meeting that I sat at, the discussion at the table, was how we were going to eliminate the collection and close our doors. Well, we haven't closed our doors, and quite frankly, we don't talk about it anymore. We always find the way to make it happen. And we always find the way to grow. That's how we roll. So in summary, for $62,000 per year, your jewel, the #1 thing to do in Sault Ste. Marie on TripAdvisor, has managed to accomplish more than keep the doors open. You've made a good investment in us, and just imagine the possibilities if you support our ask. The Bush Plane needs your support, and we're asking for that increase of funding to $175,000. Remember, we do pay city taxes. It's not as big as it looks. Thank you.
Thank you. So questions from council. We'll start with Councillor Compadich, then Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mayor Provenzano. And I don't disagree. I believe it is a jewel myself, and there are many jewels in Sault Ste. Marie, and I look at one in Ward 6, which is Pointe du Chien Trailer Park as well, and the whole area of the park. But I want to thank you for a great presentation. I see you got a significant amount of growth in visitation over the last several years. That's excellent. Okay. And so if you increased your staff, you're saying you would get additional growth, right? I just wondered, what are your expected numbers of growth in a percentage-wise? In 2017, you got 43,500 of number of visitors. If you increased your staff over the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and you got this funding, what would that growth increase to?
Councillor Compadich, as we do our budget every year, it's based on our past performances and what we strategically, realistically think is achievable for us. My role as president is slightly different than a director in that it asks more of my time. So typically I'm spending approximately an hour a day down there. What I see going on, I spoke to our staff and our amazing volunteers. You have a lifetime career, I believe, working with human resource. Our people are so committed. They love the facility. They love the interaction with the tourists that are coming in, the students. They are so overworked. They need help. The volunteers we have are carrying a huge percentage of the load, and the community is benefiting from their generosity. But our staff is just overworked. We need more people, and we don't have the money in our budget to support that. With additional staffing, we're going to be able to continue to implement some of the great ideas that are coming forward from the group of volunteers that we have, and from staff who are interacting daily with our clientele, the feedback that we're getting. But right now, we're just throwing our feet in front of ourselves so our face doesn't hit the floor. It's usually what's going on there.
Okay, thank you,
You
Council.
know that we're going to have another cruise ship, so that could be another dozen cruise ships, roughly. Visits?
Yeah.
So, and we do know, and the other one is I happened to be there for that tour. It was the first time a tour bus from Detroit has come into our facility, and we know that they're coming back next year with all of their buses to the Bush Plain. So, answer to your question is, it's going to be lots more visitors.
Your Worship, Councilor Grupata, specifically, we've achieved 10 to 12% total admission growth in the last 3 years, primarily because of cruise ships, additional bus tours, and the Road Scholar program. With a third ship, with 4 more Road Scholar tours, they're interested in a full day package that we're working with them on. We can expect anywhere from an additional 5 to 8%. So we would be talking 15 to 18% growth in admissions. Admissions alone. Events, as I say, we're working now to design an event development service so that we can actually create events in Sault Ste. Marie, like more reunions. This event we created out of nothing, and it generates in the range of $40,000 profit. So if we had the help to be able to do more than we're doing now, we expect that we'll have more numbers. And we're expecting that to be 5 to 8% more than we're doing now with the existing staff that we have.
Thank you. Mayor Provenzano, if I may, just a comment?
Yeah, please.
So we went, so this past summer, we brought a number of visitors over to the Bush Plain, and they were really happy with what they seen there, the service that they got, and it was remarkable because they've been here several times and they've never went in to see the Bush Plain. When they went in it, they were absolutely astounded by how amazing it really was, and the staff and the service we got there was completely excellent.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Next on the list, I have Councilor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Delfrey mentioned TripAdvisor as one of the, well, I think everybody mentioned it actually, and Mr. Park stopped me at Lions one day to talk to me about TripAdvisor. So I did go on, I read the TripAdvisor reviews, and you know, he's right, which are that the TripAdvisor reviews for this place are great. And so if we're, you know, if we're basing our funding on what people in our community and people from outside our community are coming in and enjoying, I think the Bush Plain is probably right that they are making an excellent play for more visitors, which of course is going to require more funding, but it's going to, you know, hopefully result in even more visitors if the funding's approved, continued growth, and you know, that continued upward trend. So good presentation, and thanks for the info.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next I have Councilor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not sure if it's Mr. Walker or Mr. Park, but the increase in funding, did I understand that it was going to go fully towards staffing?
Probably 90%.
90%?
90% of it. There's 2 positions that we really need to have. We don't have a fund development person. We're probably the only museum of our size in the province, or maybe even the country, that doesn't have a full-time fundraiser, and the other would be in business development. Some is just going to grow some of our business lines.
So, Mr. Delfrey, based on your operations this year, you're running a tight budget. How do you address the building deficiencies that have to be addressed, obviously?
Additional revenue, if we had additional operating, what we're facing is an imbalance between self-generated revenue and public revenue. Right, the average in the province for a museum is about 60-40. We have it reversed. We're generating 60%. About 65% of the revenue we have to spend, we generate. And that's unsustainable. There probably isn't a museum in the country that's doing that. And we've been pretty aggressive in that regard. There's no question. We've gone after, in the last 8 years, we created a business line for events that we didn't even have when I started there. So it's the additional revenue is what will give us the money to pay for some of those additional building costs, technology costs, equipment, and so forth. We're in the process of applying to the federal and provincial governments for $1 million renovation grant. And that renovation grant is meant to increase our capacity for events, for weddings and events, and that's additional revenue. So it's totally predicated on growing our revenue streams by having the renovation, number one, but also by having people to do more work than we're able to do with the staff that we have now.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Now, I want to go public with this to say some of the events some of the developments that we're also working on that the media have covered. I need to say that those events have not been, or those initiatives have not been approved by our board. They've not been approved by our partners yet. I wanted to give you, Council, an indication that we're not sitting on our hands. And we're not coming here with our hands out. We are inventing new business lines for us, new partnerships for us that are going to contribute to the kind of revenue that we need. And all cultural attractions do that. We're not unique in that regard. We may be a little more aggressive in that, and we may be a little more creative in it. But it's something that, in the museum world, you'll see just about anywhere you go in the country.
Yeah, I would say that you have been aggressive and successful at it.
Well, thanks a lot. We certainly have been aggressive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I have Councillor Myers next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to actually, before I ask my question, make a comment. I want to just take a second and draw Council's attention to the fact that this was the resolution that Councillor Christian and I had brought forward a year ago, April 2016, and I am really, really very, very appreciative of each one of the presenters, but also of Council. Council, Mr. Mayor, yourself and Council are asking excellent questions, and this is, in my 12 years on Council, we have never done this to this depth, and you've been here, Mike, for a lot of that time too. This is critically important, and I think it's been extremely eye-opening for us to have this opportunity to not only hear what they do, but my resolution was very simple. What impact would there be, negatively or positively, about the city funding? And we're hearing it tonight, so thank you. And on that note, I want to, I was going to highlight, and Mike, you just did it, the Canadian Bushplant Heritage Centre is self-funding 62% of their budget. We heard that the art gallery is doing 27%, museums doing 11%. 62% is self-funding, and they do it through the gift shop, the programs, rental facility, and other partnerships. And also, Council probably noticed, looking at the presentation materials, there's a differential of $200,000 this year over last year because of a program that was offered last year through Ontario Works of $200,000 that is not there this year. So as they continue to go out and try to find partnerships and programs and initiatives, it may be great in some given year, but unless it's a sustainable, then, that was great last year, and then how do you get through this year? So I think that the investment has got to be in the core operation to enable to be carried out exactly what, Mike, you just described a moment ago. So I just want to commend you. And I mean, you know, in my former life, I'm intimately familiar with all of these facilities. And I'm so glad that we've got this examining tonight. And you guys have always done a fantastic job. And the volunteers of today, many of them have been there. Well, Kim, you mentioned it, 15, 16 years, something like that. So thank you for that. And your surplus that you have budgeted, $357 for the end of this year. I mean, talk about break even. Richard, you're a great chair of the Finance Committee. So thank you for what you do. You certainly, our funding, the $110,000 is only 16% of your whole operating budget, again, compared to 77% for the museum, 67% for the gallery. 16%. And yet there's a huge return on that investment for us. Clarification, your request says $175,000 annual funding. So that is $65,000 increase. That's it.
That's correct.
It's not $175,000. It's
No.
110 plus 65 for a new funding level. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you
for the
for
public.
clarifying this. It's a 65,000% increase. We have big plans for that $357, I can tell you.
Well, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we have Councillor Butland, then Councillor Hollingsworth.
Yes, gentlemen, it's compelling, and I think as one individual, it's going to be hard for me to say no, and I suspect difficult for all of us to say no. We're not speaking for them. Mr. Mayor, at AMO, we had an opportunity to meet with the minister, and this is an old plea before them saying it just doesn't get its fair share in the provincial realm. Any feedback on that after the visit?
Yeah, so I think we can acknowledge publicly that, I mean, it would probably be anomalous in the province of Ontario to find a municipality that's funding a museum that actually isn't a municipal museum specifically, largely probably more arguably a provincial museum, and we're funding as a municipality that museum to a higher degree than the province is. So there hasn't been a concrete outreach from the minister's office with respect to the ask. What happened after that meeting is I think the Bush Plane met with our MPP, who I then spoke with, and kind of sped him up on what we did and what we presented and what you, Councillor Myers, and I talked about. And then he was setting up some meetings himself on the matter, and I have not circled back with him yet, but I will circle back with him and see where he got with that and what came out of his meetings, and I'll also circle back with the minister's office and see if they've come to any definitive conclusion, because we haven't got a definitive answer on it. But certainly we're of the opinion that, independent of your request from us, that you should certainly be receiving more support from the province of Ontario, and we'll keep on assisting you in that regard.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I want to recognize the group, because for sure they just, aggressive may be a negative word, but generally you're diplomatically aggressive with all, but you keep seeking out new avenues to bring in funding. And Mike is the one I talk to most often, but he is probably the main driver, or flyer, if you will, of the aviation sector. And I don't know if this has been announced, the Algoma District School Board is moving to launch an aviation and aerospace high skills major program that the Bush Plane Center would host. So that's another avenue, and that's coming into the modern era, and you are a museum. How do you see the two move? I think fairly obvious, but put it in words for us.
There are two reasons that we are so interested, three reasons we're so interested in the school board's high skills major in aviation and aerospace. The first one is because it's an example of, another example of our engaging our community mandate. It reaches out to the school board and brings students like the White Pines Field School in. The second reason is because having students working at the Bush Plane would be able to work in restoration, and those skills, the students that could give us extra hands to work on airplane restorations, and there's more of that work that we could do. And then the third is our volunteer base is getting older, so passing those skills on while we still have those older volunteers and starting to replace them with younger people. So the aviation high skills major would be a huge, there isn't a program in Northern Ontario. There's only 4 in Ontario, high skills majors in aviation. It would be a direct feeder program to the college, both their flight technology and their airframe maintenance program. But it would also add a new avionics program to Ontario. And all of the aviation partners, Springer and JD Aero, et cetera, in the ministry, are all struggling to find technicians in avionics. And if we have a chance to create them here in Sault Ste. Marie, that's going to help their businesses grow as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hollingsworth. My computer died, gentlemen. It wasn't for a lack of interest. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Councillor Butland took both of my questions.
Good job, Councillor Butland. So then you're done, Councillor Hollingsworth.
No, because I remember last year, Mike, you made a comment up in Thunder Bay, there's the fort that received X dollars, and you made a wonderful presentation again last year looking at the comparison about the provincial funding they received. So thank you, Councillor Butland, for asking that question. And also thank you for reaffirming how important aviation sector is to our community, and I'm glad to hear, and I know you're going out and building these partnerships with JD Aero and so forth in Sioux College.
Yeah.
One last comment, I'm going to say this 100 times, and you educated me on this. Please, the community, if you haven't been to the British Plane Museum, go, because it really is the fabric of our history of this great city. I continue to think about World War I and the hangar and the trainer that helped our pilots in our war. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know that story, go down to the British Plane Museum.
Happy to tell you.
And that is our fabric. And looking at those old pictures of the Wrights and the St. Mary's River and seeing our first airplanes touching the water of St. Mary's River, that is us, and that is something we need to be proud of. So, good job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your attendance tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk?
That brings us to the end of the presentations, Council. Under item 6, adjournment, I have a motion by Councillors Nero and Shoemaker. Now that this Council shall now adjourn.
All in favor? Carried.